She didn't raise her voice. Instead, Patricia simply pushed my workspace clear across the room, as though everything I'd built meant nothing more than cheap decor she could rearrange on a whim. My younger sibling Dylan stood watching with that smirk, already mentally decorating while my screens flickered dangerously. I agreed because arguing would only cast me as the troublemaker. So I gathered my belongings and departed. When dawn arrived, my cell phone wouldn't stop buzzing on the nightstand. The instant I vanished, their entire world began falling apart. My name is Emma Porter. I've lived 33 years and discovered that silence costs more than anything money can buy. My employer is called Crestview Risk Management. The odds are high you've never encountered their name, and if I'm performing my duties properly, you never will. My specialty involves corporate catastrophe planning. I examine data trends that forecast economic collapses, logistics breakdowns, and internal theft operations. My position demands a dedicated server link, dual encrypted storage drives, and completely uninterrupted focus. A single misplaced decimal in my profession doesn't merely result in poor grades, it translates to millions in legal exposure. Throughout the past 8 months, after relocating to my childhood residence to accumulate funds for a property deposit in this absurd housing economy, I've maintained operations from the upper spare bedroom. The space wasn't impressive, merely a 10 by 10 square with beige carpeting that carried a faint cedar scent. Yet I had transformed it completely. I purchased the workspace. It was a substantial standing-capable oak platform that required $800. I acquired dual 27-inch 4K displays so I could operate spreadsheets alongside real-time data streams. I bought acoustic dampening panels covering the north wall to reduce neighborhood traffic sounds. I funded the enhanced fiber optic connectivity package that entered the house, a monthly expense of roughly $120. I purchased the networking equipment. I covered the electrical costs powering everything. That bedroom wasn't simply a bedroom. It served as my command center. It was the power source that produced the income that purchased the food filling the refrigerator below and the fuel in Patricia's vehicle. And Tuesday evening at 7:15, Patricia decided to expel me from it. She didn't knock first. Patricia doesn't believe in knocking because she views privacy as an obstacle to familial closeness. She entered while I was deeply analyzing a logistics company in Chicago. My noise-canceling headphones were on, yet I sensed the vibration of her approaching steps. I slid one earpiece upward. "Mother, I'm occupied. I have a time constraint at." "We must relocate this," she stated. She didn't await any response. She didn't inquire. She marched directly toward my $800 workspace, positioned her feet, and shoved. The noise was awful. It was the screech of substantial metal supports dragging across hardwood that had surrendered its finish years earlier. My coffee container rattled violently, releasing a surge of lukewarm hazelnut brew over the edge onto my protective pad. My displays wobbled like towers during a tremor. The electrical strip beneath, which I had meticulously attached to the frame for cable organization, tore loose with a sickening Velcro rip. "Mother." I rose from my seat, my hand floating over my keyboard to preserve my progress. "What are you doing?" "I'm in the middle of a session." "Dylan requires the illumination," she explained, grunting as she delivered another shove to my workspace. She possessed surprising strength when feeling righteous. She displaced my entire livelihood 2 feet from the barrier, revealing the dust particles and the carefully routed Ethernet connection. "The afternoon sunshine strikes this barrier perfectly," he verified with an application. I stared at her. My mind was attempting to process the reasoning, but no reasoning existed. Only Patricia's reasoning existed. "Dylan requires the illumination," I echoed, my tone flat. "For the recording studio," she stated, wiping her palms on her apron as though she had just performed a favor by organizing. "We discussed this, Emma." "No," I said. "We didn't." "You discussed." I stated, "I'm occupied." Then he materialized. Dylan leaned against the entrance frame. My younger sibling, 26 years in age, he wore a beanie indoors despite it being 72 degrees in the residence. He gripped a measuring tape in one palm and his device in the other. Recording the bedroom. Recording my bedroom. He didn't glance at me. He examined the barrier Patricia had just exposed. Yeah, Dylan stated, nodding to himself. If we position the acoustic tiles in a checkerboard arrangement there, the echo will be perfect, and the RGB lighting can travel along the trim. He stepped into the bedroom, stepping over my computer bag like it was refuse on the pavement. He approached my workspace, my professional area, where confidential client information was currently minimized on the display, and tapped the monitor frame with his knuckle. "You're going to need to relocate these, Em," he stated. "I require the workspace for the mixing board and the microphone stand. The visual needs to be clean, minimalist." I looked at Patricia. "You want me to relocate my professional setup?" "Where?" "The dining table." "Don't be theatrical," Patricia stated. She began unhooking my calendar from the barrier, the whiteboard where I had outlined the next 3 quarters of risk evaluations. She erased a week's worth of time constraints with the swipe of her thumb. "The dining area has too much traffic. Dylan requires quiet for recording." "I require quiet," I stated, my voice escalating just a fraction. "I conduct client conferences. I manage sensitive financial information. I cannot operate in a shared space." Dylan released a sigh, the variety of noise an adolescent produces when requested to remove garbage. He rotated his device camera toward me, and for a moment I panicked, questioning if he was live broadcasting this. "The lower level is available," Dylan stated. He motioned vaguely toward the floor. "It's underground, so the sound isolation is actually superior. Natural soundproofing. Additionally, you don't require natural illumination for spreadsheets, correct? It's merely numbers." The lower level, they meant the laundry area. A concrete chamber next to a 20-year-old heating system that shuddered every time it activated. A chamber with one flickering fluorescent bulb and a ceiling elevation of 6 feet. A chamber where the wireless signal went to perish. "You want me to operate in the laundry area?" I stated it wasn't an inquiry. "It's a home professional suite." Patricia corrected me using that tone she employs when she's attempting to rewrite reality. "We can position a carpet down. It will be comfortable. Dylan is launching his audio program next week. Emma, this is his significant opportunity. He has 300 followers on social media already. He requires a professional environment." I looked at the displays. The calendar notification blinked in the corner of the right screen. "Conference with Vice President of Operations. 800 tomorrow morning." I looked at Dylan. He was already peeling a strip of adhesive from a container of LED illumination he had brought in. He hadn't purchased those lights. I knew he hadn't. I funded the credit account last week. I recognized the charge from the online retailer. $50 for lighting equipment. I had funded the very lights he was utilizing to displace me. I looked at Patricia. She was beaming at him. She looked at him with a hunger, a desperate requirement for him to be the exceptional one. The creative genius who simply required a little encouragement. She looked at me, and she saw a utility expense. She saw a banking account. She saw a piece of furniture that could be shoved into the lower level to create room for the artistry. "Dylan requires this," Patricia stated softly, placing a palm on my arm. It was intended to be comforting, but it felt like a restraint. "You're established, Emma. You're strong. You can operate anywhere. He simply requires a launch pad. Be a sibling. Assist him." My heart hammered against my ribs. It was a slow, substantial thud. If I argued, I knew precisely what would occur. Patricia would weep. She would discuss how challenging she tried to maintain this family content. Dylan would storm away, claiming I was sabotaging his creative procedure, that I was envious of his freedom. I would be the antagonist. I would be the cold corporate automaton who didn't care about artistry, or family, or aspirations. And nothing would alter. The workspace was already relocated. The decision had been determined over dinner while I was upstairs operating. I looked at the Ethernet cable stretched to its limitation. 1 additional inch and the connector would have fractured in the port. They had severed me. They simply didn't realize it yet. "Okay," I stated, the words suspended in the atmosphere. Dylan stopped peeling the adhesive. Patricia blinked, surprised by the absence of resistance. "Okay," Patricia inquired. "Okay," I stated again. I reached out and preserved my spreadsheet. I closed the computer. I powered down the displays. The screens went black, reflecting the two of them standing in my space. You're correct. The lower level is quieter. See? Dylan grinned, clapping his palms together. I informed you she'd understand. Thanks, Em. You won't regret this when I'm sponsored by energy beverage companies. I'll purchase you a new whatever it is you do. Yeah, I stated. Sure. I unplugged the surge protector. I began coiling the thick power connections. I didn't unplug the displays or the substantial equipment yet. I simply took my computer, my external encrypted storage drive, and my physical notebook. I'll relocate the substantial items tomorrow. I lied. I'll establish downstairs tonight. Perfect, Patricia stated. She was already mentally measuring the windows for blackout curtains. I'll assist you carry the laundry containers out of the way later. Don't worry about it, I stated. I've got it. I departed the bedroom. I proceeded down the corridor, past the family photographs where Dylan was always in the center, and I was always slightly unfocused or holding the bags. I proceeded into my sleeping room, the small guest room I slept in, and I closed the entrance. I rotated the lock. The click sounded like a gunshot in the quiet residence. I did not proceed to the lower level. I did not relocate laundry containers. I sat on the edge of my sleeping surface and opened my computer. My palms were trembling, not from sadness, but from a cold, crystalline rage. It was the variety of anger that clarifies things. It burned away the guilt. It burned away the obligation. It burned away the years of telling myself that this is simply what families accomplish. They had not simply relocated a workspace. They had endangered my contract. They had disrespected my profession. They had taken the shelter I funded and informed me I belonged in the foundation. I opened my backpack. I packed my passport. I packed my birth certificate. I packed the social security card I kept in the fireproof lockbox under the sleeping surface. I packed the backup drive containing 5 years of tax returns. I looked around the bedroom. I didn't require the clothes in the closet. I didn't require the old books. I required the technology, and I required the documents. Everything else was simply possessions. I opened a new incognito window on my browser. I didn't want the history to sync to the family tablet downstairs. I typed in furnished rentals immediate move-in. I had examined these applications 100 times in the past 6 months. I had countless preserved searches for apartments in the metropolitan area, nice places with floor-to-ceiling windows and security concierges. I had never clicked apply because of the guilt, because Patricia would claim I was abandoning her, because Dylan would claim I was too superior for them, because I was accumulating funds to assist the family. I looked at the cost of a studio apartment in the Riverside district, $2,400 monthly. It was expensive, it was steep, but then I contemplated the lower level. I contemplated the damp concrete. I contemplated Dylan sitting in my chair, adjusting my elevation settings, speaking into a microphone I purchased under lights I funded, discussing how challenging his hustle was. I clicked apply now. I filled out the forms with a speed that came from muscle memory. I uploaded my proof of income, my very substantial proof of income that my family seemed to think materialized by magic. Credit verification approved. Security deposit required $2,400. First month's rent required $2,400. $4,800. I transferred the funds from my savings account. The account Patricia thought was empty because I informed her things were tight last month so I wouldn't need to purchase Dylan a new gaming console. Transaction complete. Key code will be emailed upon arrival. I sat back. The digital clock on my nightstand read 10:45 in the evening. Downstairs, I could hear the muffled noise of voices. They were laughing. Dylan was probably explaining his vision for the recording studio. Patricia was probably preparing him a sandwich. They were content. They had won. They had reclaimed the space. They had positioned Emma back in her container. I zipped up my backpack. It was substantial, dense with the weight of my actual life. I lay down on the sleeping surface, fully dressed. I wasn't going to sleep. I was waiting for the sunrise. I was waiting for the silence to be absolute. I wasn't simply relocating. I was disappearing. And when the sunrise arrived and the internet expense that was in my name didn't get funded, and the refrigerator didn't magically restock itself, and the recording studio went dark, because the electrical was in my name too. They would realize that the furniture they simply shoved into the lower level was the only thing holding the residence upward. I closed my eyes and listened to the residents settle. Okay, I contemplated. You want the bedroom? You can have the bedroom. You can have the entire residence. Lying in the darkness, waiting for the sunrise to arrive, gives you substantial time to contemplate how you arrived there. You do not end up locked in your childhood bedroom at 33, plotting a tactical retreat from your own family because of one unfortunate night. You end up there because of 1,000 small cuts that you pretended did not bleed. I stared at the ceiling fan, a fixture that had been wobbling since 1999, and I contemplated the architecture of my family. It was built on a very specific foundation. I was the load-bearing barrier, and Dylan was the decoration. It started when we were children. It was subtle, the way erosion is subtle until the cliff face collapses. I was the easy child. I was the one who completed homework without being requested. I was the one who packed my own lunch because Patricia was too exhausted. I was the one who understood that funds were finite. I remember the day I received my full scholarship letter for university. It was a state institution, sensible with a quality economics program. I had operated for 4 years to acquire those grades, staying awake until 2 a.m, terrified of being average. I positioned the letter on the dining counter. Patricia came home, examined it, and smiled. She stated, "That is quality, Emma. That is one less thing for me to worry about." That was it. I was a problem solved. I was an expense that did not require funding. 2 days later, Dylan, who was 15 at the time, drew a charcoal sketch of the neighbor's canine. It was decent. Not great, but decent. Patricia framed it. She suspended it in the corridor. She posted it on social media with a caption that stated, "My son's soul is so profound. He observes the world differently. We have a true artist in the residence." She took him out for frozen dessert to celebrate his vision. I stayed home and filled out my student loan paperwork for the cost the scholarship did not cover. I did not hate him for it then. I simply accepted the roles. I was the sturdy oak. He was the orchid. Oaks do not require watering. Orchids perish if the bedroom is 2 degrees too cold. The actual trouble started 8 months ago. I relocated back home because the economy felt like it was attempting to strangle me. My rent in the metropolitan area had increased by 40% in a single year. I was earning quality funds at Crestview, but I was watching my savings stagnate. I made a logical, calculated decision. I would relocate back into the empty nest, fund Patricia a modest rent which would assist her since father had been gone for years, and I would accumulate for a deposit on a property. It was supposed to be a symbiotic arrangement. 6 months, maybe a year, a business transaction between adults who loved each other. But the instant I carried my containers over the threshold, the dynamic shifted. I reverted to being the daughter, and they reverted to being the dependent. It began with the utilities. The first month I was back, the electricity expense was elevated. It was July and the air conditioning was operating intensely. Patricia sighed loudly while examining the paper expense on the counter. She rubbed her temples. She discussed how her part-time position at the library did not fund enough to cover the surge pricing. "I'll acquire this one," I stated. It was $240. I funded it without hesitation. It felt like the correct thing to accomplish. I was residing there after all. But the next month the expense arrived and she simply left it on my placemat at the dinner table. She did not inquire. She simply positioned it there like it was my homework. Then it was the connectivity. The wireless was slow, and Dylan was complaining about delay while he was gaming. He threw a controller at the barrier one night because his connection dropped. Patricia looked at me with those pleading eyes. "You require quality connectivity for operations, correct?" she inquired. So I upgraded the plan. I positioned it on my auto-pay, $120 monthly. Dylan stopped screaming at the television, so I informed myself it was the cost of peace. Then it was the streaming services. I came downstairs one evening to discover Dylan attempting to access a premium channel. "We don't have this," he inquired, looking at me like I had failed to stock the refrigerator with milk. "I have an account," I stated. "I'll access you." A week later, I received a notification that my password had been altered. Then I observed a charge for the premium family plan. Dylan had upgraded it. When I inquired him, he shrugged and stated, "I required the 4K resolution for research. Filmmakers require observing the details." He wasn't a filmmaker. He was an individual who watched movies until 3 a.m. It snowballed. It wasn't simply expenses. It was a lifestyle subsidy. Patricia stopped purchasing groceries. Or rather, she stopped purchasing the actual groceries. She would purchase bread and milk, but if we wanted dinner, she would state, "I am simply so exhausted today." That was my cue. I would open the delivery application. I would order Thai food or pizza or sushi for 3 individuals. 60 here, 80 there. If I suggested cooking, Dylan would state he had a sensitivity to gluten this week, or he was attempting a paleo diet, or he simply couldn't handle the smell of frying onions because of his sensory processing issues. So I funded. I funded because it was easier than arguing. I funded because every time I pulled out my credit account, Patricia would smile and state, "It is so nice to have the family taking care of each other." But we weren't taking care of each other. I was taking care of them. Then came the career investments. Dylan has had 5 careers in the 8 months I have been here. First, he was going to be a photographer, then a graphic designer, then a dropshipping entrepreneur. Now, it was the audio program and streaming. Each phase required equipment. I remember arriving home 3 months ago to discover a massive package on the entrance. It was a photographic camera lens, a serious piece of glass, 1,200. My device buzzed with a fraud alert from my financial institution. I proceeded into the dining area, the container in my arms. Dylan. He was eating a bowl of cereal that I had funded. "Oh, excellent." It arrived. "Dylan," I stated, my voice shaking. "Why did I simply receive a charge for 1,200? He looked genuinely confused. "Oh, did it employ your account?" "My error. It must be preserved as the default on the family online retailer account. I clicked purchase now so fast I didn't verify." "You require funding me back," I stated. Patricia intervened. She was wiping the counter, her back to me. "Emma, don't stress him. He has a wedding assignment lined up next month. He'll fund you back when the client funds him. You know you have the liquidity. He's simply starting." The wedding assignment never occurred. The couple went in a different direction. The lens sat on a shelf gathering dust until he sold it to a pawn establishment for $400 because he required cash for a concert ticket. I never observed a cent of the original $1,200. That was the night I started the spreadsheet. I did not accomplish it out of malice. I accomplished it out of a desperate requirement to cling to reality. I felt like I was being manipulated. I felt like I was the irrational one for thinking that $2,000 monthly in incidental expenses was not normal family bonding. I opened a file on my secure operations server. I named it Project Parasite at first, then renamed it to Household Operating Expenses in case they ever observed it over my shoulder. I recorded everything. November 4th, food delivery order. Dylan's friends over, 84. November 7th, fuel for mother's minivan because she forgot her wallet, 65. November 12th, emergency veterinary expense for the feline that Dylan adopted and then ignored, 350. November 20th, subscription for online education because Dylan wanted to learn screenwriting from a famous writer, 180. The numbers were staggering. In 8 months, I had spent $19,000 on things that were not my rent and not my own food. $19,000. That was a vehicle. That was half a deposit in a cheaper state. That was my freedom, bleeding away one swipe at a time. I attempted to stop it. I really accomplished. Last month, I sat Patricia down. I had printed a simplified version of the expenses, simply the utilities and the food. I didn't even include the accidental equipment purchases. "Mother," I stated, sliding the paper across the table. "We require discussing the budget. I can't keep covering everything. I am attempting to accumulate." Patricia didn't even examine the paper. She looked at me with a combination of pity and disappointment. "Emma," she stated, her voice dropping to that soft, suffocating register. "Funds are simply energy. It flows in, it flows out. You are so obsessed with hoarding it. I am not hoarding it. I stated I am earning it, and it is flowing out faster than it flows in. Dylan is going through a challenging time, she stated, pivoting as she always accomplished. He is attempting to discover his voice. The world is so challenging for sensitive males currently. He gets overwhelmed. You are different. She reached out and squeezed my palm. Her palm was warm, but it felt cold. You are strong, Emma, she stated. You have always been the strong one. You can handle the pressure. He can't. If we don't support him, who will? Do you want him to fail? I don't want him to fail, I stated. I want him to fund his own music streaming premium. It's 10, she scoffed, pulling her palm away. Deity, you sound precisely like your father. So transactional. We are family, not roommates. You are strong. You can handle it. That was the mantra. That was the permission slip. Because I could handle it. I had to handle it because I didn't break down and weep when the wireless expense arrived. I was expected to fund it because I didn't throw a controller at the barrier. I didn't require support. My competence was my punishment, and that is why they relocated the workspace. It wasn't simply about the illumination. It wasn't simply about the audio program. It was because they looked at me, and they didn't observe a person with feelings or limitations. They observed a machine. A machine doesn't mind if you shove it in the lower level. A machine doesn't require sunlight. A machine simply hums along processing information and printing funds. No matter where you plug it in, they contemplated I was strong enough to take the insult. They contemplated I was responsible enough to keep funding the expenses from the laundry area, because that's simply what Emma accomplishes. They mistook my endurance for consent. I rolled over in the sleeping surface, the comforter bunching around my shoulders. The darkness of the bedroom felt substantial, but for the first time in 8 months, my mind was clear. They were correct about one thing. I am strong. But they were about to learn the difference between a load-bearing barrier and a falling stone. A load-bearing barrier holds you upward. A falling stone crushes you. I closed my eyes. I didn't require sleeping, but I required resting. Tomorrow was going to be expensive for them. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't going to be the one picking up the expense. The lower level did not smell like a home professional space. It smelled of laundry detergent, damp concrete, and the distinct metallic scent of a heating system that had not been serviced in a decade. I sat at a folding card table that Patricia had excavated from the garage storage. It wobbled every time I typed a sentence. The illumination was a singular flickering fluorescent tube that hummed with the persistence of a perishing insect. It cast a sickly green pallor over everything, making my skin appear jaundiced on the webcam feed. It was 7:45 in the morning. My conference with the vice president of operations for a major logistics company was scheduled for 8 sharp. I stared at the wireless signal indicator in the bottom right corner of my computer screen. It was 1 bar, one single curved line that blinked in and out of existence like a distress signal. "Come on," I whispered. My voice sounded hollow, bouncing off the cinder block barriers. I had executed a speed test 10 minutes ago. The download speed was 3 megabits per second. The upload speed was non-existent. I was attempting to connect to the corporate network to access the risk evaluation files I required presenting, but the connection kept timing out. The spinning wheel on my screen was mocking me. Above my head, the floorboards creaked. Substantial footsteps. Dylan. Then arrived the noise. It started as a rhythmic thumping, a bass line that vibrated down through the wooden beams and settled into my teeth. Thump, 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 thump. He was testing his intro music again. I reached for my device and texted Patricia. "Mother, please inform him to reduce it. I have the client conference in 10 minutes. The bass is shaking the camera." I observed the bubbles appear. She was typing. "He is accomplishing a sound verification. Emma, he requires setting the levels. Simply position on your headphones." I typed back, my fingers hitting the glass intensely. My headphones do not stop the microphone from picking the vibration. It sounds like I'm in a nightclub. "Please, he will be done soon. Be patient." I positioned the device down. I took a deep breath. I adjusted the stack of old encyclopedias I had positioned under my computer to bring the camera to eye level. I required appearing professional. I required appearing like I was in control of billions of currency of risk capital, not like a woman hiding in a laundry area next to a pile of dirty towels. At 7:58, the base stopped. Thank the universe. I connected to the video call. The video quality was grainier than usual, pixelated and lagging, but the audio seemed stable. Mr. Harrison appeared on the screen, sitting in a glass-walled professional space in the city, appearing sharp and impatient. "Quality morning, Emma," he stated. His voice was crisp. "Let's dive directly into the supply chain vulnerabilities in the Southeast region." "Quality morning, Mr. Harrison," I stated. I forced a smile. "Absolutely. Let me share my screen." I clicked the share button. The little wheel spun and spun. "Simply a moment," I stated, my stomach tightening. "The connection is a little slow this morning." "We are on a tight schedule, Emma," he stated, verifying his timepiece. Suddenly, the entrance at the top of the lower-level stairs opened. "Mother, have you observed the adapter?" Dylan's voice boomed down the stairwell, amplified by the acoustics of the enclosed space. I lunged for the mute button, but I was half a second too slow. "Dylan, shh." Patricia's voice followed, loud and shrill. "Emma is on the computer." "I simply require the adapter," Dylan yelled back. "The stream starts in an hour." On my screen, Mr. Harrison frowned. "Is everything acceptable there?" "It sounds like a domestic dispute." "My apologies," I stated, my face burning with a heat that had nothing to accomplish with the heating system. "I am operating from a temporary location today, due to some structural repairs in my main professional space." "Correct," he stated. He didn't believe me. "Can we proceed?" I finally acquired the spreadsheet to load. I was 5 minutes into the presentation, explaining a critical failure point in their trucking routes. When the washing machine to my left kicked into its spin cycle, it sounded like a jet engine taking off inside a metal container. The card table began to vibrate. The encyclopedia shifted. "I can't hear you," Mr. Harrison stated, leaning into his camera. "There is a tremendous amount of background noise." I muted myself again. I looked at the washing machine. It was accomplishing the substantial load denim and towels. It would be like this for 20 minutes. I unmuted. "I am so sorry. There seems to be some substantial machinery operating nearby." "Emma," Mr. Harrison stated, his voice dropping an octave. "We fund Crestview a premium for professionalism. I cannot make decisions on 8-figure contracts when I can't hear the analyst. Let's reschedule this for when you are in a suitable environment." "I can finish," I pleaded, dignity abandoning me. "I can speak louder." "Reschedule," he stated firmly. "Send me the dates." The screen went black. I sat there in the silence of the lower level, accompanied only by the violent thrashing of the washing machine. I had never been dismissed from a client conference in my life. Never. I closed the computer. I didn't slam it. I closed it with a gentle, terrifying precision. I required sitting back. I required leaning back and closing my eyes and counting to 10. I reached behind me, expecting to feel the mesh support of my ergonomic chair. My palm met air. I rotated around. I had been so focused on the connectivity and the table setup that I hadn't fully registered what I was sitting on until that instant. It was a metal folding chair, beige, cold, firm. My chair, the premium ergonomic chair that I had purchased refurbished for $600 3 years ago. The chair that preserved my back during 12-hour shifts was not there. I stood. I looked around the chaotic storage space of the lower level. Old holiday decorations, broken suitcases, my father's old toolbox. No chair. I unplugged my computer. I positioned it under my arm. I proceeded up the wooden stairs, my footsteps silent on the treads. I proceeded into the dining area. The sunrise was streaming in through the sliding glass entrances, illuminating the dust particles dancing in the atmosphere. It was a beautiful, cheerful morning upstairs. The contrast made me feel nauseous. Patricia was at the stove scrambling eggs. Dylan was at the dining table unboxing a new sound mixer. The packaging was spread everywhere. "How was the conference?" Patricia inquired without rotating around. Her tone was light, breezy, as if she hadn't simply sabotaged my career. "Did you manage with the noise?" I informed Dylan to keep it down. "But you know how creative energy is." "Where is my chair?" I inquired. My voice was quiet. It wasn't the voice of a daughter. It was the voice of an auditor discovering a discrepancy. Patricia paused with the spatula in midair. Dylan didn't look upward from his instruction manual. "What chair?" Patricia inquired. "My professional chair," I stated. "The black mesh one. The one that was in my professional space upstairs. It's not in the lower level." "Oh," Patricia stated. She rotated around, wiping her palms on her apron. She had that expression on her face, the one she employed when she broke a plate and hid the pieces in the refuse. A combination of guilt and defiance. "That? Where is it?" I repeated. Dylan finally looked upward. He adjusted his beanie. "We sold it." The world seemed to tilt on its axis for a moment. "You sold it?" I repeated. The words felt like foreign objects in my mouth. "Yeah. Last night," Dylan stated, gesturing to the mixer on the table. "I required the cash for the professional audio mixer. This thing is essential for the audio processing. The individual arrived and picked the chair up at like 10 in the evening. Acquired $300 for it. Quick sale. $300. It was worth double that." I looked at Patricia. I was waiting for her to scold him. I was waiting for her to state, "Oh my universe, Dylan, you can't sell your siblings' furniture." Instead, Patricia shrugged. "It's simply a chair, Emma," she stated. She rotated back to the eggs. "You're young. You have a quality back. You can sit on anything. Dylan has to sit for hours accomplishing his editing. He requires professional equipment to alter his life. We have to prioritize." "It wasn't yours to sell," I stated. "It was in the residence," Patricia stated, as if that explained everything. "We are a family. We share resources. When you relocate to your substantial corporate professional space downtown or wherever, you won't require it. Dylan is building something here. I purchased it," I stated, "with my funds." "And you live under my shelter?" Patricia snapped, the breeze gone from her voice. She slammed the spatula down on the counter. "I don't charge you market rent." "Do I think of it as a contribution?" "Universe, you are so materialistic. It is simply a thing. Your sibling is attempting to build a future. Downstairs is quieter anyway," Dylan mumbled, plugging a cable into his new toy. "You don't require a fancy chair to examine spreadsheets. Nobody observes you." "My client observes me," I stated, or he accomplished before he ended the conference because of the washing machine. "Well, that's not my error," Dylan stated defensively. "I didn't activate the washer." I looked at them. Really looked at them. They weren't evil. That would be easier. They were simply aggressively, terminally entitled. They had rewritten the narrative of our lives so thoroughly that in their version, I was the antagonist for wanting to keep my own property. In their version, stripping me of my tools was a noble sacrifice for Dylan's imaginary stardom. I pulled out my device. I opened my financial application. I opened the spreadsheet I had updated the previous night. I scrolled to the bottom. 24,312. That was the total. That was the cost of being Patricia's daughter and Dylan's sibling for the past 8 months, including the chair. "So," I stated, the single word cut through the smell of frying eggs. They both looked at me. There was something in my tone that made Patricia stop scraping the pan. It was the absence of emotion. So I stated again, "Everything I purchase, everything I fund, if it is in this residence, it belongs to the family. Is that the rule?" "Don't be theatrical," Patricia scoffed. But she shifted her weight uneasily. "It's not about ownership. It's about assisting who requires it most. You have so much. Emma, Dylan has nothing. Why are you so stingy?" "Yeah," Dylan laughed. A short, sharp bark. "What are you going to accomplish? Evict us? It's mother's residence." He shook his head, looking down at his mixer, smiling that smug little sibling smile. He contemplated this was another squabble. He contemplated I would stomp my foot, yell about fairness, and then fund pizza tonight to apologize for ruining the atmosphere. He contemplated I was safe. Okay, I stated. Okay, Patricia inquired, echoing the previous night. She relaxed, her shoulders dropping. She contemplated she had won again. Quality. Now sit down. The eggs are almost done. And Emma, can you examine the connectivity again? It's lagging on my tablet. I'll examine it, I stated. I didn't sit down. I rotated around and departed the dining area. Where are you going? Dylan inquired. Toast is prepared. Restroom. I lied. I proceeded up the stairs. I proceeded past the empty space where my professional space used to be. I proceeded into my sleeping room and locked the entrance. My suitcase was already open on the sleeping surface. I didn't require packing much more. Simply, the toiletries, the charger, the computer. I relocated with a terrifying efficiency. I didn't weep. I didn't shake. I felt light. It was the lightness of a soldier who has finally received the order to retreat from a losing battle. I verified the time. 8:25. The rideshare was 6 minutes away. I had booked it while they were discussing the eggs. I positioned on my coat. I positioned on my shoes. I took the storage drive. I looked at the bedroom one last time. I looked at the sleeping surface I had slept in as a child, the barriers I had stared at while dreaming of a life where I mattered. I wasn't departing them because of the funds. I could produce more funds. I was departing them because they had looked me in the eye and informed me that my comfort, my career, and my property were less important than their whims. They had informed me I was fuel, not family. I grabbed the handle of my suitcase. I grabbed my backpack. I didn't compose a note. I didn't leave cash on the dresser. I opened the window. It was on the ground floor of the split level, facing the back alley. I didn't want to proceed through the dining area. I didn't want to hear Patricia inquire me to fix the wireless one last time. I dropped the bag out the window into the bushes. I climbed out after it. The morning atmosphere was cold and crisp. It filled my lungs like pure oxygen. I proceeded around the side of the residence to the street. The black sedan pulled up to the curb precisely as I reached the sidewalk. I entered. Airport? The driver inquired. No, I stated, looking back at the residence. The dining area window was glowing with warm illumination. They were eating those eggs. They were waiting for me to return down and fix the networking equipment. They were waiting for the golden creature to lay another golden egg. Riverside, I stated. 112 Pine Avenue. The driver nodded and pulled away. I watched the residence shrink in the rearview mirror until it was simply a small, insignificant dot. Then I rotated around and faced the road ahead. My device buzzed in my pocket. A text from Dylan. Hey, serious about the connectivity? I can't stream if it's Crimson. I didn't answer. I reached into my bag, pulled out the identification card tool I kept in my technology kit, and extracted the tray open. I looked at the tiny chip. Then I opened the window and flicked it onto the highway. Let them stream that. To understand how I was able to depart that residence at 8:25 in the morning, with nothing but a backpack and a cold resolve, you have to understand what occurred between midnight and 4 in the morning. I did not make a rash decision. In my line of operations, we call that a panic response, and panic responses cost funds. I executed a controlled liquidation of assets. The truth is, I had been examining the apartment in Riverside District for 3 weeks. It was a studio on the 3rd floor of a renovated brick building. It had exposed ductwork, which meant it was drafty, and it faced an alley, which meant it was dark. But it had one feature that the residents in the suburbs did not have. The lease was in my name and my name alone. I had the tab open on my computer for days, the Apply Now button, hovering there like a parachute. I hadn't clicked it because I was afraid. I was afraid Patricia would claim I was abandoning her. I was afraid Dylan would claim I contemplated I was superior than them. I was afraid of the guilt, that substantial wet blanket they had spent 30 years weaving around me. But after the workspace shove, the fear evaporated. It was replaced by a clarity so sharp it felt like ice water in my veins. At 12:15 in the morning, while the residents slept, I signed the lease digitally. I watched the processing icon spin. Approved. Then arrived the funds. First month's rent, $1,200. Security deposit, $1,200. Broker fee, half of a month's rent. I initiated the transfer, $3,000, departing my account in a single click. It was a physical sensation, a punch to the gut. That was my safety net. That was the funds I had accumulated by eating inexpensive noodles and skipping vacations. But as I watched the balance drop, I realized something. This pain was different. When I funded Dylan's camera lens or Patricia's groceries, the pain was substantial and dull, like being bled slowly. This pain was sharp and clean. It was the pain of cauterizing a wound. It hurt, but it stopped the bleeding. Then the extraction began. I relocated around my bedroom with the silence of a thief. I didn't pack clothes. Clothes are substantial and clothes can be replaced. I packed the information. I took the physical files from the bottom drawer, my birth certificate, my passport, the title to my vehicle, which I had sold last year. But I kept the record and my social security card. I packed my external storage drives, wrapping them in thick wool socks to cushion them. I packed my prescription migraine medication. I packed them into my backpack, distributing the weight so it wouldn't appear bulky. Then I sat back down at my computer and opened the Project Parasite spreadsheet. It was time for the digital heist. I didn't want to scream. I didn't want to break things. I wanted to disappear. I recorded into the utility provider's website. The account was in my name. Service transfer request. Effective date today. New address 112 Pine Avenue, Riverside. I didn't deactivate the lights at the residence. That would be petty. I simply removed my billing information and transferred the service responsibilities. The next expense would arrive addressed to resident, and when it went unpaid, the darkness would be their own accomplishing. I proceeded to the streaming services, various entertainment platforms, music streaming family plan, manage subscription, cancel, exit all devices. I imagined Dylan waking the next day attempting to play his morning motivation playlist and being met with a request for a credit account. It was a small petty contemplation, but it nourished me. Then I proceeded to the online retailer. This was the substantial one. My account was the default payment method. It had been for years, because it was easier. I deleted the account. I deleted the backup account. I enabled two-factor authentication, linking it to an authenticator application on my device, not my device number, so they couldn't employ the forgot password text message to acquire back in. I was about to close the tab when I observed it. A new email in my promotions folder that I usually ignored. It had arrived at 4:30 that afternoon. Confirmation of your payment plan with the company. I frowned. I hadn't purchased anything on an installment plan. I funded everything up front. Debt makes me itchy. I opened the email. Thank you for your purchase from audio equipment retailer. Item professional audio mixer integrated audio production studio. Total financed $700. Monthly payment $58 for 12 months. I clicked the details. The billing address was the residence. The name on the loan was Emma Porter. I stopped breathing for an instant. Dylan hadn't simply employed my account to purchase the mixer. He had employed my social security number, which he must have discovered in my tax documents downstairs, to open a line of credit in my name. He had signed a legal contract pretending to be me, because he knew I wouldn't approve a $700 purchase. But he figured I wouldn't notice $50 monthly slipping out of my account. He didn't simply steal my funds. He stole my identity. I didn't scream. I didn't proceed downstairs and shake him awake. That would give him a chance to discuss, to whine, to claim he didn't understand how credit operated. I took a screenshot of the email. I took a screenshot of the loan agreement. I preserved them to 3 different cloud servers. This was no longer a family dispute. This was evidence. I looked at the clock. It was 3:45 in the morning. I stood and proceeded to the window. The street outside was perished silent. The suburban dream, quiet and peaceful. Inside the residence was rotting. I zipped my backpack. It contained my life. Everything else in this bedroom, the sleeping surface, the dresser, the old posters, was simply a set piece for a play I was no longer starring in. I unlocked the sleeping room entrance and crept out into the corridor. The floorboards were treacherous. But I knew every squeak. I had learned to proceed silently in this residence years ago, so I wouldn't wake Patricia and be inquired to accomplish a chore. I proceeded to the top of the stairs. I could hear Dylan snoring from his bedroom. A rhythmic, carefree noise. He was sleeping the sleep of someone who believes the world owes him a living. I proceeded down to the dining area. I observed the empty space where my chair had been. I proceeded to the back entrance. My palm hovered over the deadbolt. I could depart now. I could proceed out into the dark, call the rideshare, and be gone before they woke. But then I contemplated the chair. I contemplated the mixer. I contemplated the installment plan. If I departed in the night, they would spin a story. They would claim I ran away. They would play the victim. They required observing me. They required observing that I wasn't running away from them. I was proceeding past them. I locked the entrance again. I proceeded back upstairs. I hid the backpack in the back of the closet behind my winter coats. I laid down on the sleeping surface, fully dressed, my shoes still on. I stared at the ceiling and waited for the sunrise. I waited for the performance to begin. I was prepared. The accounts were closed. The lease was signed. The evidence was secured. The heist was already over. They simply didn't know they had been robbed of their victim yet. The first morning in the studio apartment was defined not by what was there, but by what was missing. There was no smell of stale breakfast meat grease drifting upward from the dining area. There was no thumping bass line vibrating through the floorboards. There was no passive-aggressive sighing from the corridor. There was only the pale gray illumination of a morning filtering through the substantial industrial window, illuminating the dust particles dancing over the empty hardwood floor. I sat on the floor with my back against the brick barrier. I had stopped at a convenience establishment on the way in and purchased a substantial black coffee and a bagel. The coffee was bitter, scalding, and inexpensive. It was the quality cup of coffee I'd ever tasted. I took a sip and looked at my device lying on the floor a few feet away. The screen was black, silent, peaceful, and then the clock struck 7:12 in the morning. It began with a single buzz, a short, sharp vibration against the wood floor, then another, then a lengthy, sustained rattle that indicated a device call, then a rapid-fire series of short buzzes that sounded like a machine weapon. Buzz, 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 rattle. I didn't reach for it. I simply watched it dance across the floorboards, propelled by the sheer force of my family's panic. It was a fascinating psychological experiment. I had removed the support beams of their life roughly 8 hours ago, and gravity had finally accomplished its operations. I leaned forward and tapped the screen to wake it, but I did not unlock it. I simply examined the notifications cascading down the lock screen like a waterfall of incompetence. Missed call Mother 3, missed call Dylan 5. Then arrived the texts. Dylan 7:12 morning. Yo, connectivity is down. Reset the networking equipment. Dylan 7:13 morning. Still crimson. Did you alter the password? Patricia 7:14 morning. Emma, the wireless isn't operating on the tablet. I can't verify the weather. Dylan 7:15 morning. Hello, I have the collaboration with social media personality in 2 hours. I require preparing. Fix it. Dylan 7:16 morning. Brother, are you sleeping? Wake upward. I took another bite of my bagel. It was dense and chewy. I chewed slowly, savoring the texture. In the old life, the life that ended previous night, I would have been sprinting down the stairs by now. I would have been on the device with the service provider, apologizing to Dylan, resetting the modem, and absorbing their stress as if it were my own. I would have been the frantic technician keeping their reality operational. Here in Riverside, I was simply a woman eating breakfast. The device rattled again. Another call from Dylan. I let it proceed to voicemail. A new notification appeared. This one was from the connectivity service provider, forwarded automatically to my email because Patricia still didn't understand how to unlink accounts. Service alert. Primary payment method declined. Account ownership transfer pending acceptance. Service suspended. I smiled. A small, cold smile. I hadn't deactivated the connectivity. That would have been malicious. I had simply accomplished precisely what they inquired. I had given them the residence. I had transferred the utility accounts to the address, removed my credit account, and authorized the transfer of responsibility to the residents. All they had to accomplish was open the email, click accept, and input their own credit account number. But they wouldn't accomplish that. They didn't know how to accomplish that to them. The connectivity was like the atmosphere. It simply existed. They didn't understand that atmosphere required a subscription fee of $120 monthly. The tone of the messages began to shift. The confusion was curdling into anger. Patricia, 7:25 morning. I simply discovered the note from the electric company. It claims the autopay is canceled. Emma, what is occurring? Why are you accomplishing this? Dylan, 7:28 morning. What the actual situation? My access for editing software isn't operating. It claims subscription expired. I have a project file locked in there. Dylan, 7:30 morning. Pick up the device. I finished my coffee. I stood and stretched. My back popped. I felt taller. I proceeded over to the window and looked down at the alley. A garbage vehicle was lifting a dumpster. The hydraulic whine was loud, but it was honest noise. It was the noise of operations being accomplished, not the noise of energy being sucked away. I decided to listen to the voicemails. I positioned the device on speaker and set it on the windowsill. First voicemail, Patricia, 7:18 morning. Emma, it's Mother. I don't know what you touched before you proceeded to operations, but the residence is offline. Dylan is freaking out. He's throwing things. You know how he acquires when his routine is disrupted. Please call back immediately and proceed us through the fix and pick up some milk on your way home tonight. She still contemplated I was arriving home. She still contemplated I was at operations. Simply unreachable. She contemplated this was a glitch. Second voicemail. Dylan, 7:22 morning. Individual. Seriously, you altered the passwords to be funny. I have social media personality and the crew accessing the server at 9 sharp. If I'm not there, I appear like a joke. This is my career. Emma, stop being difficult and text me the new code. Third voicemail, Patricia, 7:45 morning. Her voice was different now. Higher. The edges were fraying. Emma, I proceeded into your bedroom to acquire the networking equipment password from your notebook. You're not there. The closet it appears empty, and your computer is gone. Call me right now. The realization had struck. The delay time between the action and the reaction was precisely 45 minutes. I looked at the time. It was almost 8. I had taken the day from Crestview Risk Management. I had informed them I was relocating. They had been supportive. They sent me a 50 gift account for a home improvement establishment. My supervisor treated me quality than the individuals who shared my genetic code. I finally typed a response. I didn't send it to the group discussion. I sent it to Patricia. I relocated. The utilities are transferred to the residence address. You simply require positioning in your account information to activate them back. I struck send. The response was immediate. The device lit like a flare. Patricia, you relocated without informing us. How could you, Patricia? We are a family. You don't simply depart, Patricia. Who is going to fund the arrearage? The email claims there is a balance due. I ignored that. Of course, there was a balance. I had funded up to yesterday. The new cycle started today. Then arrived the emotional pivot, the classic Patricia maneuver. Patricia, I can't believe you are this selfish. Dylan is weeping. He is literally on the floor having a panic attack because he can't accomplish his program. You are ruining his life over a chair. Is this about the chair? I laughed out loud. The noise startled me. It bounced off the empty barriers. It wasn't about the chair. It was about the fact that she contemplated it could be about the chair. It was about the fact that she reduced a decade of financial exploitation down to a single piece of furniture. Dylan, you owe me for this lost revenue. If I miss this stream, I lose the sponsorship. That's $500. Emma, you're funding me that. I typed back to Dylan. No, simply 2 letters. No explanation, no apology. No, I'm sorry. But Dylan, what do you mean? No, you sabotaged me. Emma, I didn't sabotage you. I simply stopped subsidizing you. If your business model relies on me funding your connectivity, your software, and your electricity, then you don't have a business. You have a hobby that I'm exhausted of funding." It was the most honest thing I had ever stated to him. My device rang again. It was a number I didn't recognize. I hesitated, then answered. "Hello, is this Emma Porter?" A robotic voice. "This is the Fraud Prevention Department of the financial institution. We are calling to verify some unusual activity on an account ending in 4492. That wasn't my main account. That was the authorized user account I had given Patricia for groceries only 2 years ago. I had locked it previous night via the application. Speaking, I stated. We observe a declined transaction for $350 at Professional Audio Warehouse attempted at 7:55 morning. Was this you? I closed my eyes and shook my head. Dylan. He must have stolen Mother's wallet the moment the connectivity went down, attempting to purchase a mobile hotspot or new equipment to salvage his stream, contemplating her account would still operate. No, I stated clearly. That was not me. I did not authorize that charge. Thank you. We will keep the account locked and issue a new one to the primary address on file. Actually, I stated, please cancel the account entirely and remove that authorized user. Accomplished. Have a nice day, Ms. Porter. I hung. The texts were arriving faster now, a slurry of desperation and venom. Patricia, the account didn't operate. Dylan requires equipment to stream from the library. Why is the account declined? Patricia Emma. Pick upward. I am your mother. Dylan. I'm going to inform everyone what you accomplished. I'm going to post it. I'm going to inform them you abused us and stole our funds and departed us to rot. I watched the threat roll in. It should have terrified me. The old Emma would have been terrified of the public shame, of the unfortunate daughter narrative. But the new Emma looked at the empty apartment, the brick barriers, and the sunlight. I had the screenshots. I had the financial statements. I had the emails displaying the identity theft regarding the installment loan. Let him post. Let him attempt to inform the world that his sibling was an antagonist because she stopped funding his editing software subscription. I typed one last message to the group discussion. I am not returning. Do not arrive to my professional space. Do not search for me. The lease at the residence is in Mother's name. The expenses are now in your names. Welcome to the actual world. Then I accomplished something I should have accomplished years ago. I proceeded into my settings. Block caller Mother. Block caller Dylan. The vibration stopped. The screen went still. The silence that followed was substantial, but it wasn't empty. It was full of possibility. I looked at my timepiece. It was 8:15. The collaboration was supposed to start in 45 minutes. Dylan was probably currently screaming at a networking equipment he didn't know how to configure, holding a credit account that didn't operate in a residence where the silence was finally beautifully his problem. I finished my bagel. I crumbled the wrapper into a sphere and tossed it into the small refuse bag I had brought with me. I had substantial to accomplish today. I required purchasing a mattress. I required purchasing a workspace. I required purchasing a chair, a new one that no one would ever sell out from under me. But for now, I simply sat there. I watched the dust particles dance. I listened to the distant hum of traffic. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the load-bearing barrier. I was simply a person in a bedroom, and the residence I had departed behind could stand or fall on its own. I suspected it would fall, and I realized with a jolt of pure caffeinated joy that I didn't care if it accomplished. The silence in my new studio was not empty. It was filled with the hum of my computer cooling fan and the soft clicking of my trackpad as I conducted the most painful audit of my career. I had spent the past decade analyzing risk for multinational corporations. I looked for hidden liabilities, embezzled funds, and structural weaknesses in billion currency ledgers. But as I sat on the floor of my empty apartment at 10 in the morning, I realized I had been blind to the fraud occurring under my own shelter. I had blocked their numbers, but I had not blocked my access to the truth. I started excavating deeper into the digital footprint of my identity. The installment loan for the sound mixer was simply the surface debris. I required observing the foundation. I recorded into my email account. The old email address I had employed since high school. The one Patricia had the password to, because she claimed she required it to verify family flight itineraries years ago. I had altered the password previous night, but I proceeded into the refuse folder and the archived folders. That is where I discovered the parasites. They were small charges, microtransactions that I had missed because they were buried under the noise of my daily life. I discovered a confirmation email for a subscription to a premium meditation application called Serenity Now. It was $14 monthly. The account was registered to Patricia's email address, but the payment method was my device carrier billing. She had linked the subscription to my mobile number. I verified my device expense history. There it was, every month for the past 2 years, 14. Then I discovered a food delivery membership, 10 monthly, registered to Dylan's gaming handle. Then a premium cable edition for the sports package, 25 monthly. I pulled up a fresh spreadsheet. I wasn't tracking one-time purchases anymore. I was tracking the bleed. 14 here, 10 there, 25 there. It added to nearly 50 monthly, siphoned off an amount small enough that I wouldn't trigger a fraud alert, but consistent enough to cost me $600 yearly. I felt a coldness spread through my chest. It wasn't the funds. It was the intimacy of the theft. They hadn't simply stolen my credit account. They had woven their parasites into the infrastructure of my digital life. But the actual blow arrived when I decided to verify my credit report directly. I recorded into the credit monitoring service. I funded the one-time fee for a full report. I scanned the open account section. There was the mortgage on the residence, Patricia's name. Thank universe. There were my student loans funded off. There was the installment loan for the mixer opened 4 days ago, $700. And then my heart stopped. There was another one. Creditor Synchrony Financial Institution, audio equipment retailer. Date opened February 14th of this year. Original balance $2,400. Current balance $1,800. Status current. February 14th, Valentine's Day. I remembered that day. I remembered it vividly. I had arrived home from operations early to surprise them with dinner. Patricia had been weeping in the dining area because the heating expense was elevated. I had hugged her. I had transferred $500 to her account to assist out. Dylan had been in his bedroom operating on a project. On the same day I gave them $500 out of pity, one of them had employed my social security number to finance a $2,400 camera lens. I grabbed my device. My palms were shaking, not with fear, but with the adrenaline of a detective who has simply discovered the murder weapon. I called the customer service number for the financial institution. "Thank you for calling," the automated voice stated. "Please enter your social security number." I entered it. "I observe you have 2 active accounts," the representative stated when she finally arrived on the line. Her name was Brenda. She sounded exhausted. "2," I repeated. "I require details on the one opened in February. I require knowing where the item was shipped." "One instant, Ms. Porter. For security, can you verify your address?" "My address is 112 Pine Avenue," I stated, giving my new address. "I am sorry, that does not match the address on file for the purchase," Brenda stated. "Attempt 42 Cedar Lane," I stated. "My mother's residence." "Yes, that matches the item. A professional camera lens was shipped to that address on February 16th. It was signed for by she typed for an instant. A D. Mitchell Dillon. And how was this account authorized? I inquired. "I did not sign any paperwork. It was an online application," Brenda explained. "It was verified via a one-time passcode sent to the mobile number ending in 4492. Patricia's device, the device I funded, the device I was the account holder for. Patricia had received the text code. Patricia had given it to Dylan. Or maybe Patricia had applied for it herself. "Thank you, Brenda," I stated. "Please freeze this account immediately for fraud investigation." "If you accomplish that, it will impact the credit score associated with freeze it," I stated, "and mark it as identity theft." I hung. I sat there for a lengthy time. The sunrise was relocating across the floorboards. They hadn't simply pushed my workspace. They hadn't simply sold my chair. They had been structurally dismantling my financial future for months. They were building a recording studio on the foundation of my credit score. I looked at my device. It was still on Do Not Disturb, but I could observe the missed call counter ticking upward. I required hearing them. I required verifying the timeline. I unblocked Patricia's number. Almost immediately, the device rang. I answered. I didn't state hello. I simply listened. Emma. Patricia's voice was breathless. She sounded small, fragile. It was the voice she employed when she wanted me to feel like a bully. Oh, thank universe. I have been so worried. I contemplated something occurred to you. I am fine, I stated. Baby, arrive home. She stated, please. This is ridiculous. We can't fight like this. Your family, I made your favorite lasagna for lunch. Simply arrive home and we can discuss the boundaries you want. It was so tempting. The offer of lasagna, the promise of discussion, the illusion that we could simply reset the board. I discovered the loan. Mother, I stated. There was a silence on the other end, a sharp intake of breath. What loan? She inquired. Her voice was too elevated. I don't know what you mean. The lens, I stated. February 14th, 2400. You acquired the text code on your device. Mother, I simply spoke to the financial institution. Dylan informed me it was a student discount code. She blurted. The lie crumbled instantly. He stated he simply required a code to acquire the education pricing. I didn't know it was a credit account. You didn't examine the text that stated your credit application is pending. I inquired. I don't examine every text. Emma, I am an old woman. I trust my children. Then the pivot. The mask slipped. Look, we can sort the funds later, she stated, her voice hardening. But currently, you require activating the connectivity back. Dylan has a contract. If he misses this upload, he acquires Sood. Do you want your sibling to acquire Sood? He isn't going to acquire Sood, I stated. He is going to acquire Dropped. There is a difference. You are being vindictive, she snapped. Simply access and fund the expense. We will fund you back next week when my pension arrives. Your pension is $800. I stated the connectivity arrearage are $300. The electric is $200. The installment payment is $58. The financial institution payment is $100. Accomplish the math. Mother, I don't care about the math. She screamed. I care about this family. I hung. My device pinged. A text from Dylan. Brother, I'm sorry about the chair and the other possessions. I was going to fund it off when the channel blew upward. Serious. Simply assist me acquire online today. I'll sign whatever. Simply don't kill my dream because you're mad. Assist me today. Figure it out later. That was the family motto. That was the trap. Later never arrived. Later was a mythical place where debts were funded and apologies were actual. I opened my computer. I created a new tab in my spreadsheet. I named it the Timeline of Betrayal. I started cross-referencing. February 14th event. Dylan purchases 2,400 lens in my name. Conversation. Patricia informs me we are broke. Please cover fuel. My action transferred 500. March 10th. Event Serenity. Now application renewal 14. Conversation. Patricia inquires why I don't visit more often. Yesterday event. Dylan sells my chair. 300. Conversation. Dylan informs me downstairs is quieter. It was a map of every time they had looked me in the face and lied while reaching into my pocket. I required a second opinion. I required ensuring I wasn't the irrational one. I called Sarah. Sarah was the senior risk analyst at Crestview. She was 40 years old, divorced twice, and had the emotional sentimentality of a shark. She was my mentor. Porter, she answered on the first ring. Why are you calling me on your day off? Did the relocation proceed south? The relocation is accomplished, I stated. But the audit is simply starting. I informed her everything. I informed her about the chair, the installment loan, the lens, the text codes, the microtransactions. Sarah listened without interrupting. When I finished, the silence on the line was substantial. Emma, Sarah stated. Her voice was low. This isn't family drama. This is a federal criminal case. I know, I stated. You have two options, Sarah stated. Option A, you proceed to the police. You file a report for identity theft. Dylan proceeds to jail. Your mother probably acquires named as an accomplice. You never speak to them again. I can't send him to jail. I stated he's an idiot, but I can't be the one who positions him in a cage. Okay, Sarah stated. I figured you would state that. That departs option B. You execute a hostile restructuring, but you cannot accomplish this over the device, and you cannot accomplish this alone. They want me to arrive over, I stated. Do not proceed into that residence alone, Sarah commanded. They will gang upward on you. They will weep. They will guilt trip. They will lock the entrance. You require leverage and you require a witness. But since you won't bring a law enforcement officer, you require a paper shield. A paper shield. Draft a contract, Sarah stated, a repayment agreement, a confession of debt, and a release of liability. Make them sign it. If they sign, you activate the lights back for precisely 30 days to give them a transition window. If they don't sign, you proceed and you file the police report. They won't sign, I stated. They will, Sarah stated, because currently you are the only financial institution in town, and they are insolvent. You have the leverage. Emma, employ it. But treat it like a business conference. No tears, no yelling, simply ink. I hung. I looked at the empty white barriers of my studio. Sarah was correct. I couldn't simply disappear. If I disappeared now, I was departing loose ends. I was departing my credit report vulnerable. I was departing them with the narrative that I had abandoned them. I required closing the file. I spent the next 2 hours typing. I didn't compose a story. I composed a legal document. I employed the templates for my operations database. Acknowledgement of debt. Agreement to assume liability. Termination of financial support. I listed every item. The lens, the mixer, the camera, the back rent, the utilities. I added a clause at the bottom. Failure to adhere to this payment schedule will result in the immediate filing of formal police reports regarding the identity theft committed on February 14th and November 20th. It was a plea bargain. I was giving them a chance to plead guilty to me instead of a judge. I printed 2 copies on my portable printer. I positioned on my blazer. I positioned on my heels. I didn't dress like a daughter arriving over for lasagna. I dressed like an auditor arriving for a site visit. I texted Patricia one last time. I am arriving over at 4. Have Dylan there. We are going to sign some papers. If you are not there, or if you start yelling, I depart, and I proceed directly to the precinct. I looked at the send button. I wasn't accomplishing this to preserve them. I wasn't accomplishing this to be a quality sibling. I was accomplishing this to acquire my name off their ledger. I pressed send. The game was over. It was time to tally the score. I did not proceed to the residence. Proceeding to the residence would have been a tactical error. The residence was their territory. It was a place of soft cushions, sentimental magnets on the refrigerator, and the overpowering smell of the potpourri Patricia employed to mask the scent of decaying maintenance. In the residence, I was a daughter in a neutral location. I was a counterparty. I texted Patricia. I will meet you at the Daily Grind on 4th Street. 4. Be on time. She replied instantly. Okay, honey. Can't wait to observe you. I'll bring your mail. She contemplated this was a reconciliation. She contemplated we were going to share a scone, weep a little, and then I would hand over my credit account information so Dylan could upload his video. She contemplated the glitch was over. I arrived at 3:30. I chose a table in the back corner, far enough from the espresso machine to hear clearly, but visible enough to the rest of the patrons that they wouldn't dare cause a scene. I ordered a black coffee. I opened my computer. I positioned the 2 printed copies of the repayment agreement on the table, face down. I positioned the spreadsheet printed on 11 by 17 paper for maximum visibility. Next to it, I waited. At 4 sharp, the entrance chimed. They proceeded in. Patricia looked exhausted, her makeup slightly smeared, wearing a cardigan that was too substantial for her. She was performing the role of the worried mother for an audience of none. Dylan trailed behind her. He was wearing sunglasses indoors and his hoodie pulled upward. He appeared like a celebrity attempting to avoid paparazzi, despite being a 26-year-old male whose biggest audience was a bedroom full of automated accounts. They spotted me. Patricia's face lit with a desperate, frantic hope. She rushed over, arms open. "Emma!" she exclaimed loud enough for the barista to look upward. "Oh, thank universe. You appear exhausted. Are you eating?" I did not stand. I did not hug her. I pointed to the chair opposite me. "Sit down, Mother." Patricia froze. The hug perished in midair. She looked at my face, and for the first time, she seemed to register that the daughter who employed to apologize for taking space was not at this table. She sat. Dylan slumped into the chair next to her, crossing his arms and staring at the ceiling. He tapped his foot against the table leg. Thump, thump, thump. "Dylan," I stated. "Stop tapping." He stopped. He looked at me over the rim of his sunglasses. "You're in a mood." "I am not in a mood," I stated. "I am in a conference." "Emma, please," Patricia stated, reaching across the table to touch my palm. I relocated my palm to the trackpad of my computer. "Let's not be like this. Simply inform us you're arriving home. The residence feels empty. The feline misses you. The feline ignores me unless I am opening a container of tuna," I stated. "And I am not arriving home. I signed a lease in Riverside. I live there now." Patricia gasped. It was a theatrical palm to the chest gasp. "You signed a lease without inquiring me. But what about the family? We require you there. It's not safe for a female to live alone in the metropolitan area." "I am 33 years old," I stated. "And I am safer there than I am in a residence where my identity is being stolen." "Stolen?" Dylan scoffed. "Universe, you are so theatrical. I employed a code. I was going to fund it back." "Let's discuss that," I stated. I flipped over the spreadsheet. It was a dense grid of numbers, dates, and vendors. I had color-coded it. Crimson for unauthorized purchases, yellow for coerced shared expenses, blue for the loans taken out in my name. "What is this?" Patricia inquired, staring at the paper as if it were composed in hieroglyphics. "This is the cost of accomplishing business with you," I stated. I ran my finger down the first column. "Let's start with the basics. The groceries. You claim we split them, but examining the receipts from the past 8 months, I funded 85% of all food brought into the residence. That is $3,400. "I purchase milk," Patricia protested. "You purchase milk?" I agreed. "And bread. I purchase the meat, the vegetables, the detergent, and bread. I purchase the meat, the vegetables, the detergent, the paper towels, and the takeout orders. Dylan positions at midnight. I relocated my finger down. Utilities. You stated we would split them based on usage. Since I relocated in, the electric expense tripled. Dylan operates a server rack and recording studio lights 12 hours daily. I funded the entire expense. Every month, that is $1,600 in excess usage. He is operating," Patricia hissed, leaning in. "He is building a career. He is playing video games and recording intro tracks that nobody listens to," I stated. "And he is accomplishing it on my currency." I relocated to the crimson section. And here we have the fraud, the camera lens, $2,400, the installment loan for the mixer, $700, the subscription services, the food delivery charges on my old account. I looked upward. I locked eyes with Patricia. "The total," I stated, my voice steady and low, "is $29,412 in 8 months. The number suspended in the atmosphere between us, heavier than the smell of roasted coffee. Patricia stared at the paper. Her mouth opened slightly, but no noise came out. She blinked. She looked at the number again. She observed the breakdown. She observed the dates. She observed the undeniable mathematical proof of her own negligence. "No," she whispered. "That can't be correct. We borrow a little here and there. We assist each other." "I assisted you," I corrected. "You took from me." "There is a difference." Dylan finally took off his sunglasses. He looked at the spreadsheet, but he didn't appear ashamed. He appeared annoyed. He appeared like a child who had been informed he couldn't have dessert. "So what?" Dylan spat. "You have a quality position. You produce what? 6 figures. This is pennies to you. Why are you counting pennies? It's pathetic." "It is not pennies," I stated. "It is a deposit on a residence. It is my retirement fund. It is my life." I reached into my bag and pulled out the contract. I slid 1 copy to Patricia and 1 copy to Dylan. "This is not a suggestion," I stated. "This is a settlement offer." Patricia picked up the paper. Her palms were shaking. "What is this?" "It is a repayment agreement," I stated. "And a separation of assets," I listed the terms, ticking them off on my fingers. 1. I have already canceled all auto payments linked to my accounts. You have 48 hours to position the utilities in your own names. If the lights depart, that is on you. 2. You, Dylan, will acknowledge the debt of $3,100 for the equipment you purchased in my name. You will make monthly payments of $200 starting next month. If you miss a payment, I file a police report for identity theft. 3. No one in that residence is authorized to employ my name, my social security number, or my credit profile for anything ever again. I have positioned a freeze on my credit at all 3 bureaus. If you attempt to open a loan, it will be flagged and I will prosecute. 4. Dylan acquires a position. Dylan slammed his palm on the table. The coffee cups rattled. A woman at the next table rotated around and glared. "A position?" Dylan shouted. "I have a position. I am a creator. You don't acquire it, do you? You're simply a corporate drone. You contemplate the only way to produce funds is to sit in a cubicle and rot. I am building a brand. Your brand has produced 0 in revenue and 3,000 in debt," I stated calmly. "That is not a business. That is a liability. You require a W-2 income. Dylan, Starbucks is hiring. The warehouse down on 5th is hiring. You require funding mother rent, and you require funding me back. You can't make me operate at a warehouse." Dylan sneered. "I have back issues. I have anxiety." "Then acquire a desk position," I stated. "I don't care. But the financial institution of Emma is closed." Dylan looked at Patricia. "Mother, are you hearing this? She's attempting to ruin me. She's attempting to humiliate us." Patricia looked upward from the contract. Her eyes were wet. She looked small. She looked old. "Emma," she stated, her voice trembling, "this is so cold. You're treating us like strangers, like enemies. I altered your diapers. I held you when you were sick. I operated double shifts to purchase you formal dance dresses. And now you hand me an expense. You want me to sign a contract to be your mother? It was the masterstroke, the I gave you life card. It was designed to bypass logic and strike directly at the guilt center of the mind. I felt the familiar twinge in my chest, the urge to state, "Okay, mother, don't weep. I'll fix it. Simply this once." But then I looked at the spreadsheet. I looked at the line item for February 14th, the day I gave her funds while they stole my credit. I stiffened. "I am not inquiring you to sign a contract to be my mother," I stated. "I am inquiring you to sign a contract to stop being my dependent." I tapped the paper. "You raised me to be responsible, mother. You informed me that challenging operations funding off. You informed me to stand on my own 2 feet. Well, I am accomplishing it. I am standing. Why are you mad that I am accomplishing precisely what you taught me?" "But family," she began. "Family doesn't steal," I stated. "Family doesn't shove their daughter into a lower level next to a washing machine so their son can play pretend. Family respects each other." I leaned forward. "Examine the number. Mother, 29,000. If a stranger took that from you, you would call the police. Why is it acceptable? Because you share my last name." Patricia looked at the number again. She traced the digits with her finger. "I didn't know," she whispered. "I really didn't know it was that much." "Because you didn't want to know," I stated. "Because it was easier to let me handle it, but I am accomplished handling it." I took a pen out of my bag. I clicked it. I set it down on top of the contract. "Sign it," I stated. If you sign it, I will fund the connectivity expense for this month to give you time to switch it over. I will not file the police report for the loans. We can keep this civil. And if we don't, Dylan challenged. What are you going to accomplish? Sue your own mother. I won't have to, I stated, looking at him. The creditors will accomplish it for me. I'll simply report the fraud. The financial institution proceeds after you. Dylan, not me. And federal fraud charges appear really unfortunate on an influencer's resume. Dylan went pale. He knew I was correct. He knew enough about the world to know that financial institutions didn't care about his creative procedure. Patricia picked up the pen. Her palm was shaking so badly she could barely hold it. I simply wanted us to be close, she sobbed softly. I simply wanted everyone to be content. We can be close, I stated, but we can't be financially entangled. Sign the paper, Mother. She signed. It was a messy scroll, but it was there. She pushed the paper back to me. She didn't look upward. She was weeping silently, the tears dripping onto the table. Dylan, I stated. Your turn. Dylan stared at the paper. He stared at me. His jaw was clenched so tight I could observe the muscle jumping in his cheek. He hated me. In that instant, he truly hated me. I had stripped away his safety net. I had exposed him as a fraud in front of his mother. I had forced him to examine the reality of his own mediocrity. He grabbed the pen. He signed his name with a violent, jagged stroke that tore through the paper slightly. Content, he spat. You acquired your blood funds. It's my funds, I stated. There is no blood on it unless you position it there. I took the contracts. I verified the signatures. I positioned them in my bag. Okay, I stated. I will fund the connectivity expense for this month tonight. You have 30 days to acquire the utilities in your name. Quality luck. I stood. Patricia looked upward at me. Her eyes were crimson, rimmed with a combination of sorrow and a new unfamiliar fear. She was looking at me not as her child, but as a woman she didn't quite recognize. Are you arriving for the winter holiday? She inquired. A reflex inquiry, a habit. I don't know, I stated. Let's observe how the payments proceed. I rotated to depart. As I proceeded away, I didn't look back, but I heard Dylan's voice. It wasn't loud, but it was clear. He wasn't discussing to Patricia. He was muttering to himself, or maybe to the atmosphere. She contemplates she's safe, he mumbled. She contemplates a piece of paper stops me. I paused for a fraction of a moment. A chill ran down my spine, sharper than the winter wind outside. He hadn't signed that paper because he intended to fund. He signed it to acquire me to depart. He signed it to purchase time. I proceeded out of the coffee establishment and into the cool afternoon atmosphere. I clutched my bag to my side. I had the contract. I had the moral elevated ground. But as I hailed a cab, I realized that the most challenging part wasn't the negotiation. The most challenging part was knowing that my sibling wasn't defeated. He was simply cornered, and rats are most dangerous when they are cornered. I pulled out my device and called Sarah. Did they sign? She inquired. They signed, I stated. Quality. Do you feel quality? No, I stated, watching the streetlights flicker on. I feel like I simply declared war. You didn't declare it, Porter, Sarah stated. You simply finally decided to fight back. I acquired into the cab. Take me to 112 Pine Avenue. I informed the driver and take the lengthy way. I require ensuring I'm not being followed. It sounded paranoid, but after observing the appearance in Dylan's eyes, I knew it was simply risk management. I contemplated the ink on the contract was a barrier. I contemplated the signatures, jagged and reluctant as they were, constituted a treaty. I was naive. In my line of operations, I should have known quality. A signature is only as quality as the character of the person holding the pen, and my family's character was produced of wet cardboard. It was 11:45 at night. I was lying on a mattress on the floor of my new studio. I didn't have a sleeping surface frame yet. I had spent the evening feeling a strange, hollow variety of victory. I had won the battle at the coffee establishment, but the war was far from over. My device was charging on the floor next to my head. I had finally deactivated Do Not Disturb, Contemplating the drama was accomplished for the day. Then the notification noise from my operations email chimed. It wasn't the standard new email ping. It was the frantic, elevated-pitched triple tone that Crestview Risk Management reserved for Priority 1 security events. I grabbed the device. The screen was blinding in the dark bedroom. Security alert. Crestview Identity Shield. Unauthorized access attempt detected. User E. Porter identification 8894. Device computer professional model 2018. Unrecognized address location residential address state. My blood ran cold. I knew that device. It was my old operations computer. A machine I had retired 3 years ago when the screen hinge broke. I had wiped it, or I contemplated I had, and shoved it into the back of the closet in the guest bedroom, intending to recycle it eventually. Dylan. He had proceeded into the closet. He had excavated through the containers I departed behind. He had discovered the old machine, discovered a power cord and managed to boot it upward. And now he was attempting to access. I sat upward, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. This wasn't simply him looking for a file. If that computer still had cached credentials, or if he guessed my password, which was a variation of a phrase we employed as children, he could breach the Crestview server. If he touched a single client file, I wouldn't simply be fired. I would be blacklisted from the industry. I could face federal charges for negligence. He was playing with a loaded weapon, and he had it pointed directly at my career. I didn't call Patricia. I didn't call Dylan. I called the one number that could preserve me. Crestview Security Operations. This is Miller. A voice answered on the first ring. This is Emma Porter, Senior Risk Analyst. Identification 8894, I stated. I was speaking so fast I barely recognized my own voice. I have a Priority 1 breach attempt on a retired device. It is not me. I repeat, it is not me. Initiate a firm lock on my credentials immediately. Verifying voice print. Miller stated calmly. Okay, Emma, I observed the attempt. They are attempting to bypass the two-factor authentication. They are striking the resend code button repeatedly. Kill the session, I commanded. Revoke all tokens. Lock the account. Do not let them in. Executing, Miller stated. I heard the furious clatter of a keyboard. Okay. Account locked. Device flagged as hostile. We are tracing the address. It appears like a residential address in the suburbs. It is a theft, I stated, my voice shaking with rage. The device was stolen from my previous residence. Please record it as a theft so I am not held liable for the attempt. Recorded, Miller stated. You're safe, Emma. But you require altering your master key phrases within the hour, and you require retrieving that device. I will handle the device, I stated. Thank you. I hung. I was trembling. I felt like I had simply sprinted a mile. He had attempted to break into my operations computer. He had attempted to break into the one thing that was solely, purely mine. My device rang. It was Patricia. I stared at the name. The audacity was breathtaking. I answered. What did you accomplish? She screamed. She wasn't weeping this time. She was shrieking. Why is the computer locked? She yelled. Dylan was 90% downloaded. He requires that file. He is hacking a federal contractor. Mother, I shouted back, my voice echoing off the brick barriers. Do you have any idea what he simply accomplished? That is a company asset. If he had acquired it, I would be in prison. Oh, stop it. Patricia scoffed. He wasn't hacking. He remembered you preserved his intro music on your cloud drive last year. He simply wanted to acquire his composition back. He discovered the old computer in the closet and contemplated. You wouldn't mind. He's weeping. Emma, he is punching the barrier because you locked him out. He is punching the barrier. I laughed, a harsh, jagged noise. He should be thanking Universe I didn't send a tactical team to the residence. That computer is property of Crestview. He has no right to touch it. It was in my residence, Patricia yelled. Everything in this residence is for the family. You are so selfish, hoarding your files while your siblings' aspirations perish. Simply give him the password. He simply requires the audio file. No, I stated. He can record a new one or he can purchase one. But he is never touching my equipment again. You are destroying this family, she screamed. No, Mother, I stated, deadly quiet. You are. I hung. I sat there in the darkness, waiting for the fallout. I knew it was arriving. Dylan was a cornered rat, and rats bite. 10 minutes later, my device buzzed with a notification from social media. I had been tagged in a story. I opened the application. There was Dylan looking disheveled, tears in his eyes, recording himself in the dark living area. I don't usually accomplish this, he stated to the camera, his voice breaking. But I'm at my limitation. I have been operating so challenging on this launch, and tonight, my own flesh and blood, my own sibling, sabotaged me. She locked me out of the files I created. She stole my equipment. She departed me and my mother with nothing. It's irrational how funds alter individuals. Some individuals produce it to the top and forget who carried them there. He didn't tag me directly in the text, but he tagged my handle in the corner. Small enough to be subtle, but clear enough for our mutuals to observe. Then the comments started rolling in. Cousin Becky, oh my universe. Dylan, stay strong. That is awful. Aunt Sharon, I always knew she was cold. Praying for you. Uncle Mike disgraceful. Family arrives first. Random follower. Wow. Toxic sibling alert. Keep grinding. King. I watched the notifications stack upward. They were rewriting history in actual time. They were painting me as the antagonist, the rich corporate witch who stomped on her unfortunate artistic sibling. I felt a surge of nausea. For years, I had protected their reputation. I hadn't informed anyone that I funded the expenses. I hadn't informed anyone about the debts. I let them play the successful family charade because I didn't want to embarrass them. And this was my reward. Public humiliation. Okay, I whispered to the empty bedroom. You want to proceed public? Let's proceed public. I opened my computer. I opened the spreadsheet. The one with the crimson columns. The one with the fraud. The one with the 29,000. I took a screenshot. I employed the editing tool to black out the account numbers and sensitive personal information. But I departed the dates. I departed the vendors. I departed the amounts. And I departed the names Dylan and Patricia next to the charges. Installment loan fraudulent Dylan, 700. Professional camera lens identity theft, Dylan, 2,400. Utilities unpaid, Patricia, 1,600. Total theft, 29,412. I opened social media. I selected the image. I didn't compose a lengthy defense. I didn't compose a paragraph about how much I love them. I typed one sentence. I have been silent for years to protect their dignity, but I will not be silent while they attack my integrity. I struck post. I watched the progress bar. Posted. Then I deactivated the device. I didn't want to observe the explosion. I knew it would occur. The silence would shatter. I proceeded to the window and looked out at the metropolitan area lights. I felt sick, but I also felt clean. It was accomplished. The secret was out. I proceeded to the restroom to wash my face. When I returned, 5 minutes later, I couldn't resist. I picked up the device. The notifications had altered. Dylan's story had been deleted. My post had 40 likes and the comments were different. Cousin Becky. Wait, is this actual? Uncle Mike 2,000 for a lens. Dylan informed us he won that in a contest. Friend from high school. I'm so sorry, Emma. I had no idea. But there was one message that stopped my breath. It wasn't a comment. It was a direct message. It was from my great-aunt Linda, Patricia's older sibling. We hadn't spoken in years. She lived in a distant state and was largely estranged from the family. I had always been informed she was difficult and greedy. I opened the message. Linda, I observed your post. You are brave, Emma. Braver than I was. 3 little dots appeared. She was typing. Linda, your mother accomplished the precise same thing to me in 1995. She employed my name to purchase a vehicle when her credit was destroyed. She informed everyone I gave it to her as a gift. When I attempted to acquire the funds back, she rotated the entire family against me, said I was envious of her happiness. I funded that debt for 5 years until I was dry. I haven't spoken to her since. I stared at the screen. The text blurred as my eyes filled with tears. It wasn't simply me. I wasn't the first victim. I was simply the latest host. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't Dylan being creative. This was a systemic generational pathology. Patricia had learned it, perfected it, and taught it to Dylan. They were parasites who believed they were entitled to the blood they drank. If I hadn't departed, if I hadn't posted that spreadsheet, I would have been Linda. I would have been the bitter aunt in the distant state, funding a ghost vehicle for a sibling who hated me. A cold, firm resolve settled in my stomach. I had contemplated letting the contract slide. I had contemplated maybe, simply maybe, funding the connectivity 1 more month if they begged nicely. But now I knew that mercy was simply permission. I looked at the computer sitting on the floor. I looked at the account-locked email from Crestview. I wasn't simply going to depart. I was going to salt the earth. I replied to Aunt Linda. Thank you for informing me. It stops with me. I positioned the device down tomorrow. I wasn't simply going to ignore them. I was going to finalize the separation in a way that no amount of weeping or social media stories could undo. I was going to file the police report. Not for the funds, not for revenge, but because if I didn't, Dylan would accomplish this to his girlfriend or his future wife or his own children. I lay down on the mattress. The bedroom was dark. But for the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of the darkness. I was afraid of what I would have become if I had stayed in the illumination of their approval. I closed my eyes. The bridge was burned. Now, I had to ensure they couldn't swim across the river. The knock on my entrance arrived at 6:15 in the evening. It wasn't the substantial authoritative pound of a landlord or a delivery driver. It was a rhythmic, hesitant tapping. Tap, tap, tap. Pause. Tap, tap. I froze. I was sitting on the floor assembling an inexpensive particle board workspace I had purchased that afternoon. My palms were covered in dust and a screwdriver was clenched in my fist. I hadn't given them my unit number. I had given them the address of the building for the contract. But there were 40 units in this converted warehouse. I proceeded to the entrance. I didn't examine through the peephole. I knew who it was. The rhythm of the knock was the same rhythm I had heard on my sleeping room entrance for 30 years, whenever she wanted a favor. I opened the entrance. Patricia stood there. She was wearing her religious establishment coat, the nice wool one she preserved for occasions when she wanted to appear respectable. She was holding a substantial insulated cooler bag. Her hair was perfectly styled, but her eyes were darting around the corridor, scanning the peeling paint and the exposed pipes with an appearance of undisguised horror. "Emma," she breathed out. She looked at me like I was a refugee she had discovered in a war zone. "Oh, my unfortunate baby." She stepped forward, assuming she would be let in. I didn't relocate. I stood in the doorway, blocking the view of my sanctuary. "How did you discover the unit number?" I inquired. "I called the management company," she stated, brushing past the inquiry as if it were a minor detail. "I informed them I was your mother, and I had a medical emergency delivery for you." They were very sweet. She had social engineered my landlord. Of course she had. "I brought food," she stated, lifting the bag. "I produced the pot roast. I know it's your favorite. And I brought some of those cookies Dylan enjoys. I mean that you enjoy." She caught herself. The slip was tiny, but it was there. She had produced Dylan's favorite cookies and brought me the leftovers. I looked at the bag. My stomach rumbled. I hadn't eaten an actual meal in 2 days. The smell of slow-cooked beef and rosemary was wafting out of the zipper, triggering a primal response. It smelled like safety. It smelled like home. "Come in," I stated. It was a mistake. I knew it was a mistake the instant the words departed my mouth. But she was my mother, and she was standing in a cold corridor with a pot roast. She proceeded in. She surveyed the studio. It was sparse. Simply the mattress on the floor, the half-assembled workspace, and a few containers. The industrial windows looked out onto a brick barrier. "Oh, Emma," she whispered, clutching the bag to her chest. "You can't live like this. It's so cold. It appears like a prison cell." "It's mine," I stated, "and it's quiet." "But it's not a home," she stated. She set the bag down on my unfinished workspace. She started unpacking storage containers with a frantic energy. "Look, I know we had a disagreement. I know things acquired heated at the coffee establishment, but this is extreme. You running away like an adolescent, it's not you." She opened the container. The steam rose upward. She grabbed a plastic fork she had brought and held it out to me. "Eat," she commanded gently. "You appear pale." I took the fork. I took a bite. It was delicious. It tasted precisely like every Sunday night of my childhood. "I missed you," she stated softly, watching me eat. "The residence is so quiet without you. I woke this morning and I proceeded to knock on your entrance to inquire if you wanted tea, and you weren't there. It broke my heart. Emma, I felt the barrier around my heart begin to crack. Simply a hairline fracture. This was the mother I wanted. The one who cared if I was pale. The one who brought food. The one who missed me. I missed the residence, too. Sometimes I admitted it was the truth. I missed the idea of the residence. Then arrive back," she stated. She stepped closer, placing a palm on my arm. Her grip was warm. "Simply for a little while. Simply until you discover a quality place than this warehouse. You can have your bedroom back. I'll make Dylan relocate his possessions out of the corridor. We can reset." I signed a lease. "Mother," I stated, "I can't simply depart. We can break a lease," she stated quickly. "We can claim it's a family emergency. You require being home. Emma, especially currently." Her eyes shifted. She looked at my computer, which was sitting closed on the floor. "Why currently?" I inquired. "Well," she stated, her voice attempting to remain casual, but I felt her pulse quicken through her palm on my arm. "With all this mess, the accounts, the connectivity, the financial institution calls, it's simply so much easier if you are there to handle the paperwork. You know how I acquire with the passwords, and Dylan, he requires you to sign off on that security thing so he can acquire his file back. If you're at the residence, you can simply access and fix it." The crack in my heart sealed shut instantly. It sealed with a snap that was almost audible. She didn't miss me. She missed the information technology department. She didn't miss her daughter. She missed the fix-it female who made the scary crimson lights on the modem activate green. She wanted me back in the residence because proximity made exploitation efficient. I positioned the fork down. The pot roast suddenly tasted like ash. "That's why you're here," I stated. "You want me to unlock the computer?" Patricia recoiled, her palm dropping from my arm. "No, I mean, yes, that requires occurring. But I am here because I love you. You love me because I am useful," I stated. "If I couldn't fix the connectivity or fund the expenses, would you have driven across town with a pot roast? How can you inquire that?" she cried, her face twisting into that familiar mask of victimhood. "I am your mother." "Then inform me about the installment loan," I stated. I watched her face carefully. I wanted to observe the truth. "The what?" She blinked. "The loan for the mixer," I stated. "And the lens, the one opened on Valentine's Day. The day I gave you $500 for fuel, you knew." "Mother, you acquired the text message verification code. I know you accomplished. The financial institution confirmed it." Patricia's eyes shifted to the left, a micro-expression of panic. "I didn't know it was a loan," she stammered. Dylan stated it was a verification for a contest. He stated he won the lens, and they simply required verifying an adult lived at the address. I gave him the code because I was content for him. "You gave him my social security number?" I inquired. "Because they require that for the loan application." "He knows where the papers are," she yelled, defensive now. "He's your sibling. He wouldn't hurt you. He borrows possessions. He was going to fund it back when he acquired substantial. He stole my identity, Mother," I stated. "And you held the flashlight while he accomplished it." My device rang. It was lying on the floor. The screen lit with Patricia's face. She was calling me. No, she was standing directly in front of me. Then I realized it was Dylan calling her device, which was in her pocket. She pulled it out. It's him. Answer it, I stated. Position it on speaker. She hesitated, then tapped the speaker button. Mother. Dylan's voice filled the empty studio. Did you discover her? Is she there? I'm here, Dylan, I stated. There was a pause, a silence that stretched for 3 moments. Okay. Quality, Dylan stated. His tone wasn't apologetic. It was the tone of someone negotiating a hostage release. Look, Emma, I observed the post. You made your point. You embarrassed me in front of the entire internet. Are you content? I am not content, I stated. I am accurate. Whatever, Dylan snapped. Here's the deal. I will fund the $200 monthly. I will sign your stupid contract. But you have to unlock the Crestview account first, and you have to activate the connectivity back at the residence tonight. I have a makeup stream scheduled for 8. If I miss this one, I'm accomplished. So, fix it and I'll fund. You want me to fix it before you start funding? I inquired. Yeah, Dylan stated. As a display of quality faith, you destroyed my reputation. You owe me a restart. I looked at Patricia. She was nodding along as if this was a reasonable compromise, as if inquiring the victim to fund reparations to the thief was standard family policy. He's willing to fund. Emma, Patricia whispered. He's attempting. I looked at the two of them. One present in flesh, one present in voice. They were a two-headed monster of entitlement. They didn't want a sibling. They didn't want a daughter. They wanted a resource. They wanted the creature who lived in the computer and produced funds. No, I stated. What? Dylan inquired. No, I repeated. I am not unlocking the account. I am not activating the connectivity, and I am not accepting your deal. You have to, Dylan shouted. Mother, inform her, Emma, please. Patricia begged. Don't be stubborn. I proceeded over to my bag. I pulled out a folder. I had prepared this earlier after the call with Aunt Linda. It was the nuclear option. I pulled out a document. It wasn't a contract this time. It was a draft of a police report. Identity theft affidavit. Federal Trade Commission Form 14039. I held it upward. This is going to be filed tomorrow morning at 9, I stated. Patricia's eyes went wide. What is that? This is a formal report of identity theft regarding the installment loan and the financial credit line. I stated, once I file this, the police will open a case. They will subpoena the addresses. They will subpoena the device records. And since you, Mother, provided the verification code, you will be named as an accessory to fraud. You would send me to jail, Patricia whispered. She looked like she had been slapped. I don't want to, I stated, but you are leaving me no choice. You are attempting to drag me back into the hole. I spent 33 years climbing out of that hole, and I am not proceeding back down. You can't accomplish this, Dylan yelled from the device. We are family. Then start acting like it, I screamed. My voice broke. The composure I had held onto for days finally shattered. Family doesn't steal $29,000. Family doesn't manipulate me about a chair. Family doesn't make me live in a laundry area. You don't want me. You want my credit score. The silence that followed was absolute. Patricia stared at me, her mouth agape. She had never heard me raise my voice. Not once. I was the quiet one. I was the steady one. I took a breath. I lowered the paper. Here is the actual deal, I stated. The final deal. I looked at the device. Dylan, you are going to transfer the utilities into your name tonight. You, not Mother. You. You are going to proceed online. Employ your own debit account and fund the deposit. If you don't have the funds, you will sell the mixer. I can't sell the mixer. I require it. Then you don't have connectivity. I stated that is how the world operates. I looked at Patricia. And you, Mother, you are going to depart. You are going to take your pot roast, and you are going to proceed home. And you are going to explain to your son that if I observe one more unauthorized access attempt, or if I receive one more expense that isn't mine, I am proceeding this paper into the precinct, and I will call Aunt Linda to testify as a character witness about your history of financial abuse." Patricia flinched at Linda's name. That was the arrow that struck the mark. She knew I knew. "You spoke to Linda," she whispered. "We had a lengthy discussion," I stated. "She sends her regards." Patricia looked at the floor. The fight drained out of her. She looked old, defeated, and incredibly small. "You are destroying us," she stated. Her voice was flat. "You are tearing this family apart over funds." "I am not destroying the family," I stated. "I am preserving the rest of myself. There is a difference." "Fine," Patricia stated. She grabbed the cooler bag. She didn't offer to leave the food. She zipped it with a sharp, angry motion. "If you want to be alone, be alone. But don't arrive weeping to us when you realize that funds don't embrace you back. Funds don't stab me in the back either," I stated. She rotated and proceeded out. She didn't slam the entrance. She left it open, a final act of disrespect. I proceeded over and closed it. I locked the deadbolt. I locked the chain. I slid down against the entrance until I struck the floor. My palms were shaking. I felt nauseous. I looked at the unfinished workspace. I looked at the empty bedroom. I had won. They were gone. I had drawn the line in the sand, and I had defended it, but it didn't feel like a victory. It felt like an amputation. I had cut off a limb to preserve the body, but the phantom pain was already setting in. I sat there for an hour, simply breathing. Then my device buzzed. I contemplated it was an apology. I contemplated maybe, simply maybe, the shock had operated. I picked it upward. It was an automated email from the Postal Service. Change of address confirmation request. We received a request to forward mail from Emma Porter, 112 Pine Avenue, Unit 4B, to Emma Porter, 42 Cedar Lane. Request initiated at 5:30 in the evening. I stared at the screen. 5:30. That was 45 minutes before Patricia knocked on my entrance. She hadn't simply arrived to bring food. She had stopped at the postal establishment or proceeded online before arriving here. She had attempted to forward my mail back to her residence. She wanted to intercept my financial statements. She wanted to intercept the new credit accounts. She wanted to capture my correspondence so I would be forced to return to the residence to acquire my own mail. She had attempted to position a leash on me before she even proceeded through the entrance to state she missed me. The nausea vanished. The tears stopped. The phantom pain disappeared. I felt a cold, crystalline clarity. They weren't simply messy. They were malicious. They were actively, strategically attempting to trap me. I opened the email. I clicked the button that stated, "I did not authorize this request. Request canceled. Fraud alert added to address." I stood. I proceeded over to the workspace. I picked up the screwdriver. I finished assembling the leg. I wasn't sad anymore. You can't grieve for individuals who are attempting to hunt you. You can only survive them. And I was going to survive. The silence in my new studio was not empty. It was filled with the hum of my computer cooling fan and the soft clicking of my trackpad as I conducted the most painful audit of my career. I had spent the past decade analyzing risk for multinational corporations. I looked for hidden liabilities, embezzled funds, and structural weaknesses in billion currency ledgers. But as I sat on the floor of my empty apartment at 10 in the morning, I realized I had been blind to the fraud occurring under my own shelter. I had blocked their numbers, but I had not blocked my access to the truth. I started excavating deeper into the digital footprint of my identity. The installment loan for the sound mixer was simply the surface debris. I required observing the foundation. I recorded into my email account, the old email address I had employed since high school, the one Patricia had the password to because she claimed she required it to verify family flight itineraries years ago. I had altered the password previous night, but I proceeded into the refuse folder and the archived folders. That is where I discovered the parasites. They were small charges, microtransactions that I had missed because they were buried under the noise of my daily life. I discovered a confirmation email for a subscription to a premium meditation application. It was $14 monthly. The account was registered to Patricia's email address, but the payment method was my device carrier billing. She had linked the subscription to my mobile number. I verified my device expense history. There it was. Every month for the past 2 years, 14. Then I discovered a food delivery membership, 10 monthly, registered to Dylan's gaming handle. Then a premium cable edition for the sports package, 25 monthly. I pulled up a fresh spreadsheet. I wasn't tracking one-time purchases anymore. I was tracking the bleed. 14 here, 10 there, 25 there. It added to nearly 50 monthly, siphoned off an amount small enough that I wouldn't trigger a fraud alert, but consistent enough to cost me $600 yearly. I felt a coldness spread through my chest. It wasn't the funds. It was the intimacy of the theft. They hadn't simply stolen my credit account. They had woven their parasites into the infrastructure of my digital life. But the actual blow arrived when I decided to verify my credit report directly. I recorded into the credit monitoring service. I funded the one-time fee for a full report. I scanned the open account section. There was the mortgage on the residence, Patricia's name. Thank Universe. There were my student loans funded off. There was the installment loan for the mixer opened 4 days ago, $700. And then my heart stopped. There was another one. Creditor Synchrony Financial Institution. Date opened February 14th of this year. Original balance $2,400. Current balance $1,800. Status current. February 14th. I remembered that day vividly. I had arrived home from operations early to surprise them with dinner. Patricia had been weeping in the dining area because the heating expense was elevated. I had hugged her. I had transferred $500 to her account to assist. Dylan had been in his bedroom operating on a project. On the same day, I gave them $500 out of pity. One of them had employed my social security number to finance a $2,400 camera lens. I grabbed my device. My palms were shaking, not with fear, but with the adrenaline of a detective who has simply discovered the murder weapon. I called the customer service number. "Thank you for calling," the automated voice stated. "Please enter your social security number." I entered it. "I observe you have 2 active accounts," the representative stated when she finally arrived on the line. Her name was Brenda. She sounded exhausted. 2, I repeated. "I require details on the one opened in February. I require knowing where the item was shipped. One instant, Ms. Porter, for security. Can you verify your address?" "My address is 112 Pine Avenue," I stated, giving my new address. "I am sorry that does not match the address on file for the purchase," Brenda stated. "Attempt 42 Cedar Lane," I stated. "Yes, that matches." A professional camera lens was shipped to that address on February 16th. It was signed for by, she typed for an instant, a D. Mitchell Dillon. "And how was this account authorized?" I inquired. "I did not sign any paperwork. It was an online application," Brenda explained. "It was verified via a one-time passcode sent to the mobile number ending in 4492. Patricia's device. Patricia had received the text code. Patricia had given it to Dylan. Or maybe Patricia had applied for it herself. "Thank you, Brenda," I stated. "Please freeze this account immediately for fraud investigation. If you accomplish that, it will impact the credit score associated with it. Freeze it," I stated, "and mark it as identity theft." I hung. I sat there for a lengthy time. They hadn't simply pushed my workspace. They hadn't simply sold my chair. They had been structurally dismantling my financial future for months. They were building a recording studio on the foundation of my credit score. I looked at my device. It was still on Do Not Disturb, but I could observe the missed call counter ticking upward. I required hearing them. I required verifying the timeline. I unblocked Patricia's number. Almost immediately, the device rang. I answered. I didn't state hello. I simply listened. Emma. Patricia's voice was breathless. She sounded small, fragile. "Oh, thank Universe. I have been so worried. I contemplated something occurred to you." "I am fine," I stated. "Baby, arrive home," she stated. "Please. This is ridiculous. We can't fight like this. You're family. I made your favorite lasagna for lunch. Simply arrive home and we can discuss the boundaries you want." It was so tempting. The offer of lasagna, the promise of discussion. I discovered the loan, Mother, I stated. There was silence on the other end. A sharp intake of breath. What loan? She inquired. Her voice was too elevated. The lens, I stated. February 14th, 2400. You acquired the text code on your device, Mother. I simply spoke to the financial institution. Dylan informed me it was a student discount code, she blurted. The lie crumbled instantly. He stated he simply required a code to acquire the education pricing. I didn't know it was a credit account. You didn't examine the text that stated your credit application is pending, I inquired. I don't examine every text, Emma. I am an old woman. I trust my children. Then the pivot. Look, we can sort the funds later, she stated, her voice hardening. But currently you require activating the connectivity back. Dylan has a contract. If he misses this upload, he acquires Sood. Do you want your sibling to acquire Sood? He isn't going to acquire Sood, I stated. He is going to acquire Dropped. There is a difference. You are being vindictive, she snapped. Simply access and fund the expense. We will fund you back next week when my pension arrives. Your pension is $800, I stated. The connectivity arrearage are $300. The electric is $200. The installment payment is $58. The financial institution payment is $100. Accomplish the math, Mother. I don't care about the math, she screamed. I care about this family. I hung. My device pinged. A text from Dylan. Brother, I'm sorry about the chair and the other possessions. I was going to fund it off when the channel blew upward. Serious. Simply assist me acquire online today. I'll sign whatever. Simply don't kill my dream because you're mad. Assist me today. Figure it out later. That was the family motto. That was the trap. Later never arrived. I opened my computer. I created a new tab in my spreadsheet. I named it the Timeline of Betrayal. I started cross-referencing. February 14th event. Dylan purchases lens in my name. Conversation. Patricia informs me we are broke. My action. Transferred 500. It was a map of every time they had looked me in the face and lied while reaching into my pocket. I required a second opinion. I called Sarah. Sarah was the senior risk analyst at Crestview. She was 40 years old, divorced twice, and had the emotional sentimentality of a shark. She was my mentor. Porter, she answered on the first ring. Why are you calling me on your day off? The relocation is accomplished, I stated. But the audit is simply starting. I informed her everything. Sarah listened without interrupting. When I finished, the silence on the line was substantial. Emma, Sarah stated. Her voice was low. This isn't family drama. This is a federal criminal case. I know, I stated. You have two options, Sarah stated. Option A, you proceed to the police. Dylan proceeds to jail. Your mother probably acquires named as an accomplice. You never speak to them again. I can't send him to jail, I stated. Okay, Sarah stated. That departs option B. You execute a hostile restructuring, but you cannot accomplish this over the device, and you cannot accomplish this alone. Do not proceed into that residence alone, Sarah commanded. They will gang upward on you. You require leverage, and you require a witness. Since you won't bring a law enforcement officer, you require a paper shield. Draft a contract, Sarah stated, a repayment agreement, a confession of debt, and a release of liability. Make them sign it. If they sign, you activate the lights back for precisely 30 days to give them a transition window. If they don't sign, you proceed and you file the police report. They won't sign, I stated. They will, Sarah stated, because currently you are the only financial institution in town, and they are insolvent. You have the leverage, Emma. Employ it. But treat it like a business conference. No tears, no yelling, simply ink. I hung. I looked at the empty white barriers of my studio. Sarah was correct. I couldn't simply disappear. I required closing the file. I spent the next 2 hours typing. I didn't compose a story. I composed a legal document. I employed templates for my operations database. Acknowledgement of debt. agreement to assume liability, termination of financial support. I listed every item. I added a clause at the bottom. Failure to adhere to this payment schedule will result in the immediate filing of formal police reports regarding the identity theft committed on February 14th and November 20th. It was a plea bargain. I was giving them a chance to plead guilty to me instead of a judge. I printed 2 copies. I positioned on my blazer. I positioned on my heels. I didn't dress like a daughter. I dressed like an auditor arriving for a site visit. I texted Patricia one last time. I am arriving over at 4. Have Dylan there. We are going to sign some papers. If you are not there, or if you start yelling, I depart and I proceed directly to the precinct. I pressed send. The game was over. It was time to tally the score. The conference did not take place at the dining table. The dining table was where they had trained me to be compliant. Instead, I booked the small conference bedroom at the Community Financial Mediation Center. It was neutral ground, beige barriers, a circular table that prevented anyone from taking the head seat, and a ticking clock that reminded everyone that time was billable. I arrived 20 minutes early. I set up my station with the precision of a surgeon preparing for an operation. To my left, the evidence file. To my right, the solution file. In the center, I positioned a single black pen. At 10, the entrance opened. Patricia proceeded in first. She looked smaller than she had 2 days ago at my apartment. She wasn't wearing her religious establishment coat. She was wearing a gray sweatshirt and denim. She looked exhausted, stripped of the pretense. Dylan followed her. He was vibrating with restless, angry energy. He wore a headset around his neck as if to signal that being here was interrupting something critically important. He pulled out a chair and slumped into it. "This is stupid," Dylan muttered. "We could have accomplished this over video call." "We attempted accomplishing this over the device," I stated, my voice even and cool. "And you attempted to hack my operations computer, so now we accomplish it in person with witnesses." I gestured to the glass partition where a mediator sat in the next bedroom, visible but not intrusive. "Let's acquire this over with," Patricia stated, her voice thin. "You made your point, Emma. You embarrassed us. You relocated. What more do you want, Blood?" "I want severance," I stated. I opened the computer. I didn't rotate it toward them. I kept it facing me. "I have filed the preliminary fraud report regarding the installment loan," I stated. Patricia flinched. Dylan stopped spinning. "I haven't submitted it to the police yet," I continued. "It is sitting in the draft folder of the Federal Trade Commission's reporting portal. I have also drafted a report regarding the attempt to forward my mail without authorization. That is a federal crime, Mother. Postal fraud." Patricia closed her eyes. "I simply wanted your expenses to arrive to the residence so we could sort them." "You wanted to intercept my new credit accounts," I corrected. "Let's not lie in this bedroom. This bedroom is for truth." I positioned my palm on the evidence stack. "But we aren't here to discuss the $29,000 you stole. I have already accepted that funds are gone. I am writing it off as an unfortunate investment." Dylan scoffed. "Must be nice to simply write off 30 grand. "It isn't nice," I stated, looking at him. "It is devastating, but I can earn it back. What I am here to discuss is the residence." I pulled a document from the bottom of my stack. This was the twist. "Do you recognize this, Mother?" I inquired, sliding the paper across the table. It was a loan modification agreement from 18 months ago. Patricia stared at it. She paled. "What is that?" Dylan inquired, leaning forward. 2 years ago, I stated, keeping my eyes on Patricia. Mother informed me the roof was leaking, and the foundation required shoring upward. She couldn't qualify for the refinancing on her own, because her credit score was 540. So she inquired me to co-sign. She stated it was simply a formality. She stated she would make the payments. I looked at Dylan. I signed it. I positioned my name on the deed and the mortgage to preserve the residence you are currently residing in. Which means, Dylan, if Mother defaults on the mortgage, the financial institution doesn't simply take the residence. They arrive after me. They garnish my wages. They destroy my security clearance. Dylan looked at Patricia. He looked genuinely shocked. You positioned her on the deed. I contemplated you stated the residence was ours. It was for the family, Patricia whispered. And here is the reality, I stated, opening the spreadsheet on my screen. I verified the mortgage status this morning. You are 2 months behind, Mother. You haven't funded the mortgage since I relocated in and started purchasing the groceries. You employed the grocery funds I preserved you to purchase what? I don't even know. I was catching upward on the credit accounts. Patricia defended herself weakly. You are 60 days away from foreclosure, I stated. And because I'm on the loan, you are 60 days away from taking me down with you. The bedroom proceeded silent. So, I stated, here are your options. There are only 2. I slid the first document across the table. Option A, we sell the residence immediately. We position it on the market next week. We take the equity, fund the mortgage, fund the debts, and you and Dylan discover an apartment you can actually afford. I proceed away with my credit intact. No, Dylan slammed his palm on the table. You can't sell the residence. My recording studio is there. My entire setup. I grew upward there. Then you have option B, I stated. I slid the second document across. It was a thick packet. Refinancing and removal of liability. You discover a way to refinance the loan in your name only. Removing me completely, I stated. And you, Dylan, you acquire a position, an actual position with a tax form, because Mother can't qualify for a refinance on her pension alone. You have to become the co-borrower. You have to position your name on the line. Dylan looked at the paper as if it were radioactive. Me? I have unfortunate credit. I have student loans. Then you quality fix it, I stated. Because if you don't remove me from this loan within 90 days, I am forcing a partition sale. I have already spoken to an attorney. As a co-owner, I have the right to force the sale of the property to protect my financial interest. I will sue for partition, and the judge will order the residence sold at auction. Patricia looked upward. Her face was gray. She realized finally that I wasn't bluffing. You would position your mother on the street, she inquired, her voice trembling. I am giving you 90 days to preserve yourself, I stated. That is more than you gave me when you shoved my workspace into the barrier. I am giving you a choice. Stand upward or sell out. I leaned back in my chair. If you choose option B, I will fund the mortgage arrearage $4,000 today. That is my parting gift. That brings the loan current. After that, I never fund another cent. You take over the connectivity, the electric, the water, and the mortgage, and you spend the next 3 months discovering a lender who will take me off the title. Dylan, Patricia stated, rotating to him. Her voice was urgent. Dylan, examine me. Dylan was staring at the table, his jaw operating. You have to acquire a position, Patricia stated. We can't lose the residence. But my stream, Dylan began. Forget the stream, Patricia snapped. It was the first time I had ever heard her raise her voice at him. Do you hear her? She is going to sell the residence. You have to operate, Dylan. You have to assist me. Dylan looked at me. He looked for the sibling who employed to sneak him 20 for movies. She wasn't there. You're a monster, he whispered. I am a mirror, I stated. I am displaying you precisely what you appear like. Patricia released a lengthy, shuddering breath. She picked up the pen. She looked at the refinancing agreement. It was a promise to remove me. It was a promise to take responsibility. She didn't sign it immediately. She looked at me for a lengthy time. The anger in her eyes faded, replaced by a deep, profound sadness. It was the appearance of someone realizing that the golden creature hadn't simply flown away. It had rotated into a hawk. I treated you like a machine, she stated softly. The words struck me in the chest. I hadn't expected them. I expected excuses. I accomplished, she continued, tears spilling over her lashes. I contemplated you were simply built to carry possessions. I contemplated you didn't feel the weight because you never complained. I treated you like an appliance, Emma, like a refrigerator that I could simply open and take from. My throat tightened. It was the apology I had waited 33 years to hear. It didn't fix the funds. It didn't fix the lost trust. But it acknowledged the reality. "I am not a machine, Mother," I stated, my voice thick. "I am simply a person, and I am exhausted." "I know," she whispered. "I know." She signed the paper. She slid it to Dylan. "Sign it," she ordered him. "And tomorrow you are proceeding to the staffing agency." "Mother, sign it," she yelled, slamming her palm down. "Or I will sell the mixer myself." Dylan jumped. He looked at his mother, terrified. He had never observed the enabler deactivate the tap. He grabbed the pen. He signed. It was messy, angry, and resentful, but it was legal. I took the papers. I verified the signatures. "Okay," I stated. "I will wire the mortgage payment to the financial institution directly this afternoon. The connectivity is in your name as of midnight. Quality luck." I stood. I packed my computer. I packed the files. I proceeded to the entrance. "Emma," Patricia called out. I stopped, my palm on the handle. I didn't rotate around. "Will we observe you?" she inquired. "Not for a while," I stated. "You have substantial operations to accomplish, and so accomplish I." I proceeded out. I proceeded out of the sterile professional space into the bright sunlight of the street. I took a deep breath. The atmosphere tasted different. It didn't taste like guilt anymore. It tasted like zero balance. 6 months later. The morning illumination in my studio is different from the illumination in the lower level. It is unfiltered. It strikes the bamboo plant I purchased for the windowsill. A plant that I water and that grows simply because I care for it. I sat at my workspace, an actual workspace. Solid walnut purchased with the bonus verification I received last month. I took a sip of my coffee. It was a pour-over made slowly, precisely the way I appreciated it. My device chimed with a notification from my financial institution. Incoming transfer 150. Sender Patricia Mitchell memo payment 4 of 60. It wasn't much. At this rate, it would take them 5 years to fund back the loose change debts. And they would never fund back the $29,000. But that wasn't the point. The point was that the funds were flowing in the correct direction. I opened the email from the financial institution. Loan modification complete. Borrower removed Emma Porter. They had accomplished it. It had proceeded down to the wire. Dylan had acquired a position at a logistics warehouse, ironically, a competitor of one of my clients. He operated the night shift. He hated it. He posted about how much he hated it every day. But his pay stubs combined with Patricia's pension had been enough to refinance the loan. I was free. I verified social media. I still followed Dylan, though we hadn't spoken since the conference. He had posted a photograph yesterday. It wasn't a stage shot of him pretending to be an executive. It was a picture of him in his high-visibility vest, appearing exhausted, holding a coffee cup. The caption stated, "The grind is actually actual. New microphone arriving next month. Funded by me." It had 12 likes. One of them was mine. He wasn't famous. He probably never would be, but for the first time, he was actual. A knock arrived at my entrance. I opened it. It was a delivery driver package for Emma Porter. That's me. He handed me a container. It was substantial. I brought it inside and opened it. Inside was a premium ergonomic chair. Brand new, carbon black. There was no card, but I verified the shipping label. The billing reference was D. Mitchell Warehouse Payroll Deduction. He had purchased me my chair back. It probably took him 2 months of wages. I ran my palm over the mesh back. I sat down in it. It fit perfectly. I spun around in the quiet, sunlit bedroom. Individuals contemplate revenge is about destruction. They contemplate it's about burning the residents down and salting the earth. But as I sat there, safe in my own space, credit score climbing, future unanchored, I realized the truth. Revenge isn't about making them suffer. It's about letting them suffer the consequences of their own actions so they can finally learn how to survive. I had taken away their crutch, and they had fallen, but they had picked themselves upward. I rolled my chair over to the window and looked out at the metropolitan area. I wasn't the load-bearing barrier anymore. I was simply Emma, and for the first time in 33 years, that was enough. Thank you so much for listening to this story. It was a lengthy journey, but I contemplate we all learned something about boundaries and self-respect today. I would love to hear your contemplations in the comments below. Have you ever been the financial institution for your family? How did you handle it? And please let me know where you are tuning in from. I love observing our community grow from all over the world. If you enjoyed this story, please ensure to subscribe. Strike that like button to support the channel, and don't forget to press the notification button so this story can be heard by more individuals who might require the